Patreon's a month. Just waiting for Pharaoh to get in here. My phone overheated, man. I don't know. It's 90 something degrees. All right, yeah. Patreon.com/Taylor Durden. $4 a month, man. My phone overheated. I guess, you know what I mean? It's so fucking hot, man. So over summer at this point. I wish it could perpetually be fall, you know? There ain't no way to get the leaves like that if ain't no summer to do that to them. I hope my fans aren't too loud.
No, that's fine. I don't want to ask the people in the chat room if it's too loud. I can barely hear them, so not bad.
Okay, cool. Man, sorry, my phone just overheated. I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought it was that happened. I got disconnected last time. They just ended the stream, so I thought you had the same thing, experienced the same thing that I did. But you said it was your phone overheating.
Yeah, it just overheated. I don't know. I was charging on a portable charger. Maybe that's why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay. Pardon to those who were listening. That happens sometimes.
Yeah. Just to pick up where we left off, I was asking you if you think that the numbers are cooked, that they're fixed numbers as far as male to female birth rates.
Mm-hmm.
They say 105 males are born to every 100 females, but 113 out of 113 to 100 men or males to females die between age 0 and 4. So
Mm-hmm.
even if that's the case, you still have a bunch of males. The mortality rate's high for males. Is it
Correct.
because the male just being a higher maintenance creature, I guess, being the creative principle
Not
instead of the
necessarily,
necessity
because
principle?
we look at the past and we see that that did not occur. So you look at these so-called modern birthing conditions, and they're not conducive to any type of life form. It's a very hostile environment that the offspring comes into. Obviously, each gender has particular designs, and you have to be careful of how the mother especially, but the father, as far as him setting up where his offspring, his seed is going to be introduced into the world. He's supposed to be the one who is wise about that, making sure she's protected and the infant coming through or the offspring coming through is protected. So if he's wise, he's not going to choose a hospital, because more infants die in hospitals. More adults die in hospitals. Most people lose their parents in hospitals. So what does that say? Don't go to hospital. The best places are in your home, where most people were arrived, since they're using these silly terms these days, unalived. So I'll use arrived. Well, when people are arrived, in the past, they were usually arrived in their homes, the place where they're going to be nurtured and grow, which makes more sense. And they also left or departed in their home, not in some cold, garishly lit so-called hospital. And these environments are inhospitable to males. So as soon as you come here, especially if you're in the U.S., you're going to get mutilated if your parents don't say anything. Usually they sign away, the mother signs something, and sometimes the father is just out of it, doesn't care at work or whatever, might care, but allows. People believe in these so-called systems without questions. The mother should always question these things. No, you can't touch the child. No, I'm not naming my child. I'll name my child privately, and if I decide to give you any information, you'll get it when I give it. And I know in the UK it's like that. You have to, what's the baby's name? We need the name. We have to register it. This is not a car, but people don't think. And the same thing goes with this act of mutilation, aka so-called circumcision. And males are mutilated. Many countries where they call it FGM, but they don't call it male mutilation, infant male mutilation. They just call it circumcision. Well, it's kind of, cutting off parts. When an arrival comes in, that's highly traumatic. And so these things occur with the males. And other issues happen, when the child is brought in, the light and what is emitted through the lighting is not conducive for males, period. It harms males. It hurts the eyes. It, causes bleeding, internal bleeding in certain circumstances. So even the very lighting is anti-male. Females usually don't have a problem with it. They're more resilient. That's why females don't have problems in classrooms with the types of lighting that is used in most classrooms, in most schools. Males usually have a problem. They get hyperactive. They fall asleep. They don't want to be there. They get antsy. Your lighting. And then, of course, don't get started on the toxic buildings themselves and the people in these buildings, the people around them. If you knew the spiritual vibes coming off of these so-called physicians, these nurses and other so-called care providers, you wouldn't have anyone in there. You wouldn't even have your dog in there. And people care more for their dog than they do about their offspring. So if you want to bring back balance, then you have to start somewhere. And as I said, it's going to have to be either one of two things with this generation of females. You're going to have to go overseas and find a mate, like they did in days of old, or you're just going to have to double up and we'll start getting into polygamy. That happened in the past before as a result of diseases and wars. Most males are exposed to things because of the way they live. Males are expected to sacrifice themselves. Not that that's right, but that's why we have so-called conscription and draft for males. Not that that's the best thing for any society, but that leaves a disparity too. If you look in so-called history again, and you look at these wars, a lot of males were unavailable. So women had to work in plants. A lot of males did not return, or they returned damaged. And so that created problems. And that, you have a dearth, again, dearth meaning, less in numbers, a lack of. All of these things occurring as a result of the controllers within an empire and the people, the so-called people, just allowing themselves to become pawns. When you allow an empire system to own your regenerative powers, you are a slave. You are beneath a slave. You have literally given up your access to your soul.
Before we got cut off, you said that you said so-called Y chromosome. What would you call the Y chromosome if not Y chromosome?
Well, I say so-called a lot because of these terms and where they come from. I look into what they mean originally, so I just say so-called. And when I do say it, caveat to all listeners, do some etymology lookups, and you'll see for yourself what some of these words mean and where they come from. Many of the words, especially for so-called body parts, are actually names for so-called deities. And I don't know if you're comfortable with that. It's kind of like having a religious icon advertisement within you. No, I don't think that's wise.
So you're like a NASCAR driver.
Correct, with all these stickers of companies and businesses all over you, on your shirt, on your back, on your car. No, that's not what you're here for.
So yeah, no, I mean, I was just looking at some of these disparities. I just wanted to run through like a few of these stats. Like, obviously, like I posted the other night that from 0 to 4, it's 113 boys die compared to 100 females, and then when you get up to from 15 to 24, it's 164 boys dying to 100 females, and then when you get up to 34 to 45, it's like 187 males to 100 females deaths.
Right.
And so I did the numbers on it, like the projected death rate, like, or how many males to females would die in that period from 18 to 50. Because I was looking at it like, okay, from 18 to 50, I guess this is your hypothetical marriage market, kind of. And
Mhm.
so,
Your fertile years.
yeah, they were saying that 6 million. This is just in America, but I'm sure this is probably widespread everywhere. But they said there'd be 6 million men dying between 18 and 50, and only 3 million women dying between
Mhm.
18 and 50. And so, I mean, that's leaving millions of women, in a situation where they're going to have to share, or they're going to have to go into some sort of dysfunctional single parenthood situation. And I mean, if you break down the numbers even further, the average marrying age is 30, 31 for a man.
Mhm.
So 18 to 31, they're not even thinking about getting married. And that's like the largest population of males, because a lot of the deaths are happening between, like, in that period, I guess, between 18 and 40, you have a lot more deaths from accidents, war, what have you. And
Mhm. Mainly accidents and the types of endorsed so-called death styles, so-called lifestyles that are endorsed for boys and sanctioned and allowed. I know this might hurt your toes a little bit, but football, for example, you see how the American style football and rugby, not just your style of football, but all these various sports, nothing wrong with them, but they're played in terms of, harm and hurt, not compete and grow and develop camaraderie between not only your opponent, but also with your teammate, as opposed to, these are the adversaries and you're out there to kill them and hurt them. That is what is taught. And so nothing wrong with assertiveness. And you're taught that males are taught aggression or that they are by nature aggressive. That's not true. If you look at the species, the female is the most aggressive. And so if you want to say where you want to get your anger from or your anger issues from, probably from your mother.
well, I mean, like, if we're breaking it down as far as organs, female and male principle, I mean, they say that the liver, being a more solid organ, is a feminine organ, and it's the generator of anger.
Mhm.
So I
Or
mean,
the holder of anger, because it doesn't generate it, it would hold it. So most of your organs hold the chemicals that are related to certain emotions. So we associate fear with the renals and the adrenals. We associate anger and heightened states of awareness with the liver. So, all of these various organs are associated with particular chemical states that are associated with emotions. But your emotional style, how you express them, that comes from how you're raised and the chemicals that are circling within you during the time of your, pardon the term raised, but during the time of your upbringing. So whatever's going on around you, and especially prenatally, what's ever going on when you're being carried by your mother, what she's exposing herself to. And most females, most families have no clue these days about pregnancy and the sensitive nature of pregnancy. All the things that women are exposed to, they're not supposed to be exposed to. It's amazing that, we have the number of children that are being born, male or female, considering. So
I mean,
you could say males are not, they're refusing to be born considering the hostile environment that they're coming through.
yeah, I mean, I mean, then you just have an environment that's gearing women to not want to be mothers, or to be anything that resembles a mother, because for whatever reason that's associated with, I guess, with failure, or with uh, being railroaded, or being, like, taken advantage of.
Well, worry not, the empire will accommodate in a few more so-called years. There will be technology available for those who can afford it. I mean, it's already kind of there. The so-called IVF is one of the technologies, and soon you won't even have to carry. You can have your offspring in some type of ectogenesis environment, and all you have to do is donate an egg, and you can select the sperm you want. I mean, sperm banks have been around for uh, more than 50 years. So, and that already spelled the slow demise of the masculine principle. and sperm banks are cheap. And the mentality behind it, if you knew your worth, you would not go in there and get $25 or some even less than that. And I don't know what they do. I've never been in one, but I know from research they don't pay males much, if anything, for
even if it's 250,000, it's still not worth it.
Right, exactly. You got the point. Exactly. And most people don't recognize that, males especially. Females might have a higher price, but it's the same thing. I don't care if it's $1 million. You shouldn't put any price on any part of you. If you do, I'm not going to say what you are, but that's not wise. And you have no place being a father or a mother if you're willing to sell yourself to get whatever. That doesn't make any sense. So you're in a senseless place where people do not know their worth and what they think. And I shouldn't even say worth. They don't know their importance. And they refuse to learn and know what their importance and their purpose is. And I don't like to use they, but it all boils down to either self or those you know or those you encounter. So what do? You look at self first and you make sure that if this is you, change immediately. You do not want to be that person.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I think they take it wrong when I bring up these type of stats. They think I'm like attacking women or saying that like I don't know that I should just have a stable of women or something. I'm more so saying like, hey, males, men, they have to have to really take responsibility. And
no, what needs to be done is this realization of what you are and who you are. It's a fact that you have a certain amount of time of viability with your so-called eggs. When you know that, then you recognize this is no time to be playing Ho or any other game or anything else. You know what you want, and then of course you're going to obviously seek and only attract the males who recognize that and respect that. But this whole idea of, I'm invincible and it doesn't really matter what goes on, you don't realize you have a connection, males and female, to what comes out of you. And if you're breeding and bringing forth abominations, you need your blank kicked because you are contributing factors that we don't require and we don't want. Those who are rational and logical and righteous, we don't want that here. That's the reason why there's a separation of people in the past many times, because many don't have or share the same type of universal law mindset that says, okay, I'm going to be responsible with myself. All of these so-called institutions that are set in place, if you look at them, they're wicked. Planned Parenthood has nothing to do with Planned Parenthood. It's about killing infants. So-called, the protests in these organizations about reproductive rights, no, they're for the right to kill offspring. How is that reproductive?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, because you said in the last podcast or last episode, or the last conversation we had, you were like, I think what you alluded to is that basically people that never were, or beings that never were, are what the parasites are, like, in a sense, like being like aborted babies, or being the ejaculations, or even if it's I guess a collision, of spirits that's that create like a particle collision through like tantric sex. It's producing these spirits that never win. Much like like almost like
your transmission is breaking up.
You hear me now?
Okay, there you go.
So I thought what I took from it is that you were saying like the parasites, or what ends up being parasites, is basically all the beings that never were, and it's like all that never was, like the abortions and the ejaculations and the sex that led to nothing. It creates spirits that never congealed or never came to be, and that's what like a parasite becomes, or that's where like if that's like how you would phrase it, like they are all that never was. Like the parasites, because they're not, a parasite is essentially something that is not, it's almost like lacks presence, so it's kind of not there, but it lives off of your presence or your energy.
Well,
So
we know this much. Well, we should know this much about parasitic forces. They come in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And we should know that they are here not to assist. They are here to be opportunistic and get in where they can fit in. And if you breach yourself, then they're there waiting. That's just the way it goes. So you want to make sure that you cleanse and purge and not put yourself in these types of situations where you become a host or hostess for any type of opportunistic parasite. Usually when something is opportunistic, you don't even know it's in you, or you don't even know it is you. So these are the ways to be. And what you must do in the so-called mating ritual is not to put yourself in situations where you're going to be around these types of individuals, and that you are not that type of individual or so-called sentient. You want to make sure that that's not you, and you want to make sure that you do not commingle with that type of sentient. Why?
yeah,
The value of self is also the value of purpose. What's your purpose, and the purpose of you that that you are designed for? If you don't see the importance in that, then it's up to others to see that you don't see it, and to steer clear of you. For those who have a vested interest in you, okay, they can attempt to help you change or see the light, as it were. But anyone else, probably not the wisest thing. So starting with males, teaching them that you don't just go and have sex, so-called sex or whatever, gratification actions for whatever purpose. If it's outside of procreation, then you're not supposed to do it, period. It's plain and simple. That's it. And the same thing with females, same exact thing. And the difference between the two is the female has to recognize, it's like, wait a minute, you are limited in many different ways. You're limited in your fertility. That's a given. So it's not anything you want to play around with. Both should never play around with their creative principles, the regenerative principles. Don't play around with them. Respect them. You could kind of say they're not yours. You're only holders of them. You're stewards and stewardesses of those regenerative properties. You don't own them, but you have a responsibility and an obligation to be wise and respectful of those principles, of those capabilities. And anyone that sees that you are not, or sees that you come from a so-called culture where it is allowed to be loose or whatever, then they're wise to stay away from that individual.
yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, as far as like men taking responsibility, their approach to sex, or what we call in sexuality or sex, that has to transform. Like, that's what produces ultimately, I feel like, a lot of these numbers, like 93% of all prisoners being men, and like 10%, it's like a 10% chance that a man will see prison in his lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's already ridiculous. 27% of men under 40 have erectile dysfunction. I feel
Well,
like so much.
again, these are all related to the factors I mentioned earlier. The stats that are not talked about as much or researched as much are the stats that show, even in households where there is a so-called father, the father is remote, is distant, and that's as a result of either something that happened to him, or something that has been done to him over time, or things that he has done to himself. This is not the way to be the main component in the household as far as the guide and leader. So now the males that are going to come through, and the females that are going to come through that household, are not going to be airtight in, as far as being sensitive and wise and logical and observant. They're not going to be that. They're going to have major issues, and they're going to pass those on, or they're going to become victims of the flaws that have been set in motion. So both the so-called matriarchal and the patriarchal have to make major changes. It all boils down to both. So you can spot things before they occur, before you even get into the realm of so-called couple and then parents. You should be able to spot these things before they even occur so that you don't end up in a situation with an individual that you have now mated with and have offspring with. And now you might regret it, but that offspring regrets it even more. So don't put yourself in those situations. And if you have already, time to start repairing. You need some outside assistance and not just any. Most of your counselors are female, so you don't want to go to a female counselor, or at least have some balance. Find both male and female counseling that you can go to and that you can receive guidance from. But again, you're going to find that most of your therapists, most of your counselors these days are female, and that's an imbalance. And most of them are going to come at it from a feminist angle, and that is going to lead to a lot more problems than it's worth. Not to say that females are inept or incapable of being therapists, but I'm just saying they're not like anyone else. They can be, and they are influenced by the world around them. They have to be unbiased and wise. It's very rare to find someone like that. The average female, if you talk to her, she has some so-called feminist tendencies. It's very rare to find those who actually see truth and recognize feminism it shouldn't even be. There's no place for that. That is the silliest thing. Feminism is racism. Feminism is anti-family. Feminism is pro-anti-family. It has nothing to do with the encouragement or the enrichment of a family structure. So why even bother with it? You could say the same about racism. Has nothing to do with your family. It has nothing to do with family building. It has everything to do with destruction of people.
Yeah.
If you're a feminist, then you should be a humanist. Meaning you are for anti-violence against anyone. This whole concept of no violence against women. Well, what about no violence against anyone? And how selfish can you be? What about no violence against children? Folks don't realize that feminists don't care about children. They'll abort them in a heartbeat. So the focus is not on your children. The focus is selfish.
I mean, half of the aborted kids are female, so correct. They don't care about females.
Exactly. So feminism is a psychosis. So basically, it's like you're following sick people. Don't do that. People, I don't mean sick like they can't avoid it, they can't help themselves. I mean deliberately sick, willfully sick, and they can help themselves. They just choose not to. You don't want to follow that. Think for yourself, be independent in your thought, and recognize that no, there's no value in any of these so-called institutions or ideologies. Not everybody is one way.
Yeah.
You can't go around hating men, you can't go around hating females. Don't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't help anybody to be in a state of hate, but as far as erectile dysfunction is concerned, I feel like it's a mix of things, like a cadre of reasons. Obviously the health is poor, the estrogen, the circulation is poor, a lot of reasons I feel like on the health end. And then I guess it's all related to health, but I think at the same time, there's two other things. Is like the body doesn't even want to have sex with the wrong person. So it's not, you're trying to force it. So it's not a dysfunction. It's actually behaving the way it's supposed to be. And then also, obviously, I think people, born has, misplaced people's sexual energy. So creates void their inabilities at different times. But I think a lot of erectile dysfunction is just, the body is not even dysfunctioning. It's just like, this is wrong. And the body's intelligence is just being overridden.
Mm-hmm. That is a factor, no doubt. But obviously, there are more factors involved as well. Men are damaged in when they arrive here, as I mentioned before, with the mutilation. Then, of course, with the water and the foods, and whether you can be organic, vegan, raw foodist, but you're still getting those same things that are going to affect the shape of your penis, the stamina and strength of your penis, and the circulation that goes through the penis. Most people don't consider these things. You can mitigate these and repair these, but this is not taught. Most sexual issues are taught from a feminist, female perspective. They're not taught about men's sexual health. And what is taught is, again, very minimal and has nothing to do literally with true sexual health. It doesn't take in consideration the spiritual aspect. It's not holistic, in other words. So
Yeah, I
what
mean
you're
the
doing,
whole thing. The whole thing. I feel like is female climax oriented, and I think for me personally, being circumcised and having been fed into that meat grinder, I feel like um, it totally separated me from what I actually like myself or what my actual drives are, because I'm so worried about um, pleasing this other person. And
well, that's
yeah,
how
so I
males
think
are socialized. Males are socialized to serve females. That's all you see. You know, you go to, I mentioned this before, and you go to school, you see females who run the industry called education for the most part. So you're taught to serve females. You're taught to respect them to a certain extent. You're taught to don't raise your hand to one. Don't say certain words around them. They can use F-bombs all they want, hit you if they want to, but you're supposed to walk away and accept it. The reality is, the truth is, not the reality, the truth is, no one should be putting their hands on anyone. And any female that hits you, whether it's out of fun or out of hate or angst because she didn't like what you said, get away from that thing. Literally, you don't want that to be your anything. So-called female friend, definitely not your wife, and definitely not the mother of your offspring. Get away from that. And I said thing for a reason, because she has lost her femininity. A female who wants to mature into a woman recognizes that just like a man is taught how to respect a woman, she has to be taught how to respect the man. There's certain ways that she has to learn how to speak to males, and women are not taught that anymore. Just like you're taught, this is how you talk around a woman. You know, if you ask people over a certain age, you were taught, don't, you know, if a woman walked by and the guys are cursing, you all of a sudden change your language. Did you change your language when your grandfather walked by? No. So you're taught to respect women. You're taught not to respect other males. You're taught to be self-deprecating and hate yourself. And then, of course, it's kind of a dichotomy. At the same time, you're taught to be arrogant about yourself. I'm the best. I've got the biggest. I'm this. I'm that. Well, at the same time, you hate yourself. That creates a rift within. And so, of course, you're not going to be able to cope with getting together with someone on a so-called committed basis. Of course not. And any woman who is actually wise, she'll recognize this. But they don't. So you're in a world full of females and males as opposed to men and women.
yeah. No, I mean, I don't, like you said, it's really not like you can shift blame on either side. It's a unit that's broken apart at this point. And because I look at it like women don't really have a good compass, because a lot of the men aren't being fathers, but I mean, it's by design to destroy the father. So it's kind of like, it's like a never ending loop of like pointing fingers. Ultimately, people just got to pick up where they are. And
You're taught more about hating fathers than the other way around. There's more respect for the mother and the female principle than there's for males. So yeah, you can say it is lopsided. It's more against males than it is females. And I'll put this to the test. I've done this before. For anyone who looks at whatever, I don't know what, television, internet, whatever, Netflix or whatever flicks, look at your favorite program or programs or any program. Just pick one randomly as a test and listen to the first few minutes of the story as they present the conflict, and you'll either see or hear anti-male rhetoric, and definitely anti-father rhetoric. Someone saying, my father's in blah, 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 and no damn this or no damn good. I had to escape my father. And you'll hear all of these various things that are anti-father, and there might not even be a father in the cast or in the plot, but yet they'll manage to put that in there. This is definitely done by design. And then go look at the credits and see the people behind this. These are agendas.
do you
You're
think if
taught to
men,
hate your father. You're taught not to want to reconcile with your father. The very holidays that you celebrate are anti-father. You have this Mother's Day worldwide. You can go anywhere in the world, they celebrate Mother's Day. And it's a long, drawn-out holiday. They even have a women's week. They have a women's month. They have a women's day. There's nothing for literally for men, literally, or boys. And boys are the number one victims of abuse, despite what the numbers, and we get back to those numbers. And boys are abused more than any group. That's why you look at the numbers. Wait, why is the mortality so high? Well, there you go. Boys get beat up in schools. Boys have to worry about bullying more so, physical violence as opposed to just verbal violence. They usually end up in a household where there's an imbalance and they have no connection with masculine energy. So there's no outlet for them. So they become alone and withdrawn. And so you see high suicide rates in males. Obsession, fetishes all go up because of these.
30. Yeah. I think suicide between 30 and 50 is I mean, it's continually going up and I think it's one of the biggest killers of men between 30. I think it is the biggest killer of men between 30 and 50 right now, suicide. Or one of them, top 5, I know. But like, do you think if men were to take their sexuality back and respected themselves in that way, that things would change? I feel like ultimately, if men would stop being so cheap about sexuality, I think things would have to change. You know, I think people
well, stop looking for validation from females. Males do not make a move within themselves unless a female approves of it. If he moves funny, if he sounds funny, if he's not according to her liking or approval, he's not a real man. And so you see this. If he has modesty about his body, he is not a real man. So you have to stop being in that mindset. And this, of course, comes with how they're socialized, how they're raised, whether it's in a household that has both parents or usually, as you see today, a single mother household. And this is also a stat. You can look this up. Most of your men and males in prison come from single female-headed households. Where there was no father figure there might have been a boyfriend or so-called stepdad. You get what you get when it comes to those numbers. And if a female is putting her child in that situation, yes, there are many good men who step into those situations and they are great father figures or stepfathers or even boyfriends who are not of that type of ilk. But is that the norm? Is that the exception? According to the numbers, probably not. So any female who is smart recognizes, I'm not getting pregnant and I'm not getting abortion. So what's that say? If you want sexual gratification, you're going to have to use your hand. And if she wants sexual gratification, same thing applies. But she has to recognize there's too much at risk, whether, talking about our own vessel and what will happen as a result of the sexual act. She controls the sexual act as a result of the matriarchy we are in. If she decides she wants to abort, not a problem. If she decides she wants to leave it on a church doorstep, not a problem. He cannot walk away, even if he's not the so-called father. If she says he's the father, well, if he doesn't deny it or get some type of so-called DNA testing, he's stuck and he will end up either in jail or paying support, even if that is not his seed. So who's running the show in that sense? So you don't want to end up in these situations.
I mean, sex, like actual intercourse, not masturbation. I mean, like it begins and ends with the man. The end is when the man finishes, and the beginning, it can't start without the man. The penetration.
Exactly, and you're not taught that. You're not shown that. You're like, oh no, it's the woman that matters. No, if your daddy doesn't come first, you're not here. You're not born. That's just a given. So you think you're respectful of both parents. I don't care what type of people they are. Without them, you're not here.
Yeah, and you got no chance at undoing some of the madness. But yeah. I mean, just breaking down. Like, I wanted to get more into as well some of the numbers because, like we were saying, I mean, the way people utilize or abuse their sexuality is crazy. I was looking at the numbers. It says 1 out of every 6 men have a child by multiple women.
Mm-hmm. That's horrible.
1 out of 6. You already, if you meet 6 guys, one of them is gonna have multiple children by two or more women.
Correct.
So I
And
mean,
the
and
female has more that she may not have multiple fathers, but that is often the case too. But she has multiple sexual partners. And I don't even like that term partner. That makes it innocuous. If you go to the core of this, these are beings that are indulging in inappropriate actions. They're not. They have. It's like they don't know what they have. You have to recognize and know, and that comes with study. That comes with edification through your so-called guardians, not your teachers. That whole going into school and getting so-called sexual education, that's no different than the government setup in most countries, leaving the government to do what is your responsibility. You don't want any government in your business. You don't want any government dictating what's supposed to happen with you. When you do that, you are putting yourself in the worst way at risk. You are losing your so-called humanity when you do so. So you are the one responsible for all of that. So you take responsibility for that. So that means what? You find out that this male has who knows how many mommies or whatever the term is, and children floating around, but yet you still go with him. Well, you get what you get.
yeah, no, I feel like they should be ineligible for a whole swath of women. Women should be cutting themselves off to a person like that. But
But they don't. They see that as an attraction.
yeah, I mean, and it said also like 2/3 of the men with multiple baby moms are divorced or were divorced, and then 25. It said 25% were never married.
Mm-hmm. And
And
mind you, it does take two. So you can't. We don't just blame one. But in this instance, those who are listening might saying, "Oh, you're tough on the female." Yeah, because you're the one with the house. And I can't just walk into someone's home. This is not a metaphor. I'm just using an analogy so you can get a visualization. You can't just walk into someone's house. And anyone's house that allows that, well, their house is going to be filthy and robbed.
yeah,
You have the house, you control the doors, and you have a responsibility and an obligation to be wise. And if you
yeah. I mean,
haven't been taught that from the females, your progenitors, then you can go and curse them out because they left you to the streets. So you're
and to
supposed
speak.
to be taught these things, and if you weren't, then it's no need to blame because that's done. What you need to do is just arm yourself, study, respect yourself, come out of these loops, and recognize before you make these errors. And if you have, and I'm not calling a child an error, but I'm saying the action that brought about the offspring was an error. So if you've already done that, don't go that route again. Plain and simple, easy fix. And don't go the route of abortions. That is the dumbest thing. If you know what's involved in abortions and they don't tell you, the physical and so-called spiritual and experimental effects of abortions, if you only knew, I can give an entire lecture on all of the things that occur within the female and the things that she passes on as a result of these abortions.
Yeah, I heard it makes the child more suicidal. If a mom aborted a child and then she has a kid later, that kid is more suicidal. I mean, I just heard that. I don't know the stats on that, but that's what I've heard. But
Imagine if there was a murder in a house and you go and rent that house out and you live in that house.
yeah, and you're in a haunting at that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Correct.
But and as far as double standards is concerned, like you were saying as well, though, I was looking up. They said the rise of single fathers is up like 25% of all the single parent households are single father, but all of those women, none of those women are going to prison like men do when they don't pay child support.
No, nor are they being ostracized and being called deadbeat moms. That's a term that's reserved, if you notice, they only say deadbeat dads. Never will you hear deadbeat moms. The mother is considered regardless. I've heard people say things about females who have been highly abusive and so-called toxic to their offspring. I actually know people who have murdered they ended up, they served like maybe 5 years, but they did something for insurance and they're back out on the streets. They've murdered children, and I don't mean abortions. And yet they're told that, or they're not held accountable, and people will tell their surviving offspring, hey, that's your mother, you need to respect her. You don't need to respect her and her actions. Yes, you need to acknowledge the fact that without her, you're not here, but you do not allow that type of behavior, and you distance yourself from it, because that's poison. You do
Yeah, I
not
mean,
want that spread.
I guess it's just people, just a gradual process of people treating each other like they're disposable. Because, like I said, the average age of marriage is 30, 31.
And that's too
And
late. Literally, when you think about it, that's very late.
yeah,
Again,
because
females are
in
not
56,
thinking.
in 56, it was 22, 23.
Correct. Females are not
1953.
thinking that, I don't, it's the programming. They're socialized no differently, in the sense that the exposure to this wickedness, this poison in media and other forms, and all other institutions, they're exposed to that. And what they're being told and sold and what they're buying, because it takes two, the violation is not just you. These are not little girls. When they become of age of awareness and volition, they can determine, okay, this makes no sense, and I'm not going to include that in my living. But yet they adopt this mindset, and they forgo facts. The fact is, your viability only lasts a certain amount of time. After that, forget about it. And you hear this foolishness, I don't mind having a baby into 40. Do you realize what's going on and what you end up doing? More than likely, you're going to have issues and complications. And you see that if there were some stats done on it, you'll find that most of the children with issues, so-called problems that occur, that they, I guess, used to call birth defects, or issues of identity, occur with, not always, but with mothers who are over that age that they should have been bearing children. So you get a lot of women having children into their late 30s and 40s, and many, to this day, I'm sure those listening are children or offspring of parents who got pregnant late in life. That's not the best thing to do. Your fertile times for females are at a certain age, and that's the best time to be.
What's the best window for females?
The best window for females is between 18 and 26. So that means what? Her mentality.
A lot of people miss the boat.
A lot of people miss the boat. Exactly. You cannot be immature and you're like, oh, I'm only 18 and I got to live my life and have fun and all that. No, it doesn't work that way for anybody. And whether male or female, you got to recognize purpose and respect the hierarchy of why you're here. Not this, I'm here, damn it, and I'm going to do whatever the heck I want. And that's very immature. It's very emotionally immature.
Yeah, you got to know who you are and you got to know what you are, Right. But, man, so, I mean, there's so many things I want to unpack with that. I mean, I remember, well, the next thing I was going to say was the average age for marriage is 30, 31, but the average age for divorce is 42. So people on average, they're only married for 10, 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Little stints.
Because the average age for divorce for a woman is 40. So, man, like, when it comes to, like, as far as women.
The gig marriage economy. You've heard of the gig economy, jobs here and there. Well, the gig relationship economy, where and it'll be acceptable. You get married for 5 years, and you, with the foreknowledge of, this is only going to be 5 years, and then I'm out. It's like no big deal. Like digital nomads, whatever. We're going to be together for 5 years and do what we can in 5 years, and then hey, nice knowing you. Keep in touch.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to a male's window, what is the best window for males at this time?
Well, obviously, a male can be fertile throughout his lifetime, especially if he takes care of that energy. And that's the way he's designed, because in certain circumstances, the architect, if you will, of all of this recognizes what foolishness sentience will get involved in, including wars. So you'll have situations where there will be males, but they'll be older, and you'll have females that are viable. But what's she supposed to do? Like, I'm not getting with that 60-year-old. Well, what if that's all there is? Okay, well, bye-bye sentient life on the planet, or so-called planet. We're just going to have to, put in a request for some atoms between 18 and 26. Not going to happen. And we see this time and time again in history, so-called history.
I mean, it's really a crunch situation. If you're factoring all this in, if men aren't getting married till 30, and a lot of them are dying earlier, they're dying on average earlier than women, and they're getting divorced at 40, 42. Like there's really no, like, as far as unification, like there's really a small window. It's not really happening, and I feel like, as far as raising the children, the way people have positioned themselves, I don't even think they consider that. That's not even weighing into the process as far as why people are getting together. It's almost like you said, they're just doing what they want to do, and everything else is just the repercussions. It's not necessarily like moving in the flows of creation. It's more so like arbitrary euphoria.
Very selfish, very vain, very self-centered, not considering the whole purpose behind being in a union, a unit, and disrespecting that entire setup that's been here before us, and that we are just stewards, as I mentioned before. But if one recognized that and respected that, and you come from an entire background of people who practice that and show you how these things are to be done and respected, you will see an entirely new realm. And we will, but we're just going through the motions right now, and this is what's going to happen. When you look back in so-called history, whether it's and most history's been doctored, but when you look back in, I guess, the most recent so-called past 200 years in certain so-called societies, and then you compare where you are today, most people have a little vain response or arrogant response. I'm glad I'm not back then. At least we have showers. These people didn't have showers back then. Or I'm glad I'm not back then. We have toothbrushes. Little things like that. But what will someone say when they look and reflect upon this time?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of endless in that regard. I mean, I'm just saying, like, as far as the window, the things that women have to pick from at this point, it was saying that 10.5% of men between 25 and 54 are unemployed and not looking for work.
Well, you think of those stats are also, think about this when it comes to so-called stats and numbers. Stats and numbers are also, they're like a twofold purpose. They're there allegedly to provide data so that you can get answers regarding numbers and quotients, and so that you can allegedly design programs that service.
You got muffled.
Uh-oh.
I don't know what happened. Oh, damn. I had another point I wanted to raise, man. But he was talking and I forgot it. Just inviting him again. Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay. That's typical. But as I was saying, the one of the main things that goes on in the mindset of most when it comes to considering all of these factors, especially numbers and stats, they're supposed to influence you. That's the other reason, and probably the main reason for stats, to influence your decisions, to influence the decisions of so-called governments. And therefore, if you want to influence a population, and numbers can be very sobering and frightening. which is another, I guess you can say psychological tactic of using numbers to engineer a so-called society or sway or persuade a particular group or population. And that is done too. So that's why I say so-called stats, and take them, with not necessarily a grain of salt, but be diligent when you are using them, and do as much digging as you can to verify if they are accurate. And obviously, there's not much verification that you can do unless you yourself hold some type of study and survey. Otherwise, you're going to just go to another study to verify another study.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think is happening as far as people that are not really, that are just in codependency, or they're in like some sort of like attachment paradigm or something, where they can't seem to break up, they can't seem to get away from each other, like. And I know a lot of it because I was looking at the stats. It was saying that more people, like the divorce rate between 18 and 44 had dropped, or 18 and 43 or whatever had dropped, because whatever, one reason or another. But I think that the divorce rate dropped just simply because people are just using it more so to pay rent and things of that nature. It's not like they want to be together or anything like that. It's like they can't break up. They can't even afford to break up at this point, or they just have some sort of, because I see it, you see it all the time. People break up, make up, break up, make up. They just can't get out of the loop and move on, to where they could, open up life for themselves or the other person. What do you think keeps people in that attachment paradigm where they won't let go, but they don't want to stay?
Obviously, nothing is across the board or like a blanket. There are some people who really have genuine connections, and there are things within themselves that they haven't resolved, or things outside themselves that are constantly pulling at them. So they recognize that there is a connection there, but that's why there's a back and forth. People like that, couples like that, require a third party. And it's very difficult these days finding third-party assistance in the form of some type of counseling. But they require that because they do have a benefit to being together. And then, of course, there are others. Remember, it's not blanket. There's all different types. There are others who literally are like a drug to an addict. And they just feel this attachment to this individual because they like what goes with it. It actually feeds their biochemistry. And so they'll keep returning for more of whatever it is. And then, of course, there are those who have fallen into a level of complacency and fear where they figure, okay, if I move away from this individual, I'm going to lose a lot. And I put too much into this and I'm not ready to go out and to, be single again. So I'll just stick with it. Or like leaving a job or some other type of thing associated with empire. They stay with the individual because of that complacency factor. It just takes too much in their mindset to find another. Well, why would you want to find another? You need to literally see what's going on within you and work with that other individual as you out-process, so that you both can out-process from each other if need be. And then when you do, you're better off. You've actually grown. You've recognized that, hey, this individual with their issues, no different than you with your issues, but you come through them together. So yes, that couple too, like the first scenario, can also benefit from holistic, wise, balanced counseling. They too can benefit from it. The addict attachment, probably not, because they more than likely got together under the worst types of reasons. And so they should have gotten the clue early on. But, hey, have you seen an addict recognize that they made a mistake early on when they got involved with the illicit source of their addiction? No, there's no rationality or logic in the mind of an addict. So those types of couples, they too can benefit from counseling, but they need out processing where they recognize, okay, time to get apart. And that can come from family, but that family has to be balanced. Or it has to come from themselves, where they recognize, okay, no more of this because literally we're wasting away here. The one who should have the say that is going to make the difference is supposed to be the female, because if she recognizes, okay, I only have a certain amount of time with these eggs. So me wasting time with you and going back and forth with this addiction is taken away from my time. So
That's what I
regardless of
wanted to ask.
yeah, you know, she's got to come to that conclusion, and no matter how much it hurts, just say, you know what, I'm out, and do it cold turkey, and don't look back.
I remember we had a conversation privately, and you were just saying, you were talking about how there's a lot of women that say that they don't want kids, but they just don't know that they want them yet, or if they actually have any desire or drive to have a child, they will leave the man that's not providing that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, like, how I guess as far as like when it comes to that scenario, as far as women navigating that situation, or men, you know, for as well, but like how, like, I guess what are your actual archetypes as far as running into a woman if she's 30 and she doesn't have children? Because I mean, I've heard this statement: if she's 30 with no children, she's crazy, or you know, she you know, her body don't work. So I feel like I don't know. If she's 30 with no children, that's a funny, you know, it's a broad brush statement, but I mean, like, as far as like,
There
if
could
a
be many
woman's
factors
30,
involved. If a woman is so-called 30 and childless, there could be many factors involved. She could be lazy. You know, a lot of people don't want to. I mean, that comes from your guides, your so-called parents, and the people around you, your so-called culture, and of course from you. Many people don't want to leave the place that they're in because of their attachments to culture and family. Well, guess what? Maybe there's nobody in that place for you, and you've been around, literally around, and those who are in your graduating class are probably either you have the standards that are not realistic, and you might be missing the man who literally could be the best mate for you, but you've got standards that say, I want this and I don't want that, and the man's been there since high school and you've been ignoring him. That's your loss. Or there may not be any man for her in that area. You got to be wise and recognize, you know, there might be some female homosexuals, but if that's not how you swing, then why are you staying there?
how many women do you think are honest when they say they don't want children, or do you think they just never been
There are
around the
many
right?
females who are honest, but they're honest for incorrect purposes or reasons. They more than likely have been influenced by things that have occurred within their household structure with their mothers and the things they might have seen with their mother. So they despise, it's like, okay, I'm not going through that and I don't want children. Or they might be influenced by media, and that's a strong pull. Or they might be influenced by the females around them in their so-called cohort, or I don't like those psychological terms, but that's the word. Or so-called peer group, another word I don't like. But they could be influenced by various factors, and what usually occurs is they end up at a loss. They end up on, you know, the old saying, with the, you know, short end of the stick. And their so-called female friends end up married with children. They don't recognize when someone has done a B move on them. And you know what I mean by B move. And they don't recognize they have been the victim of energy, so-called energy vampires. These are people who like to see you in a bad state. Meanwhile, they're telling you, you know, like the monkey see, monkey do trick. They're telling you, yeah, you know, girl, you don't need a man. You know, like, come on, you can be independent, get your education, get your job, get your money. And meanwhile, they're getting their husband, they're having their children, they're doing all the things that, you know, a woman can do and should do, but they're telling you otherwise. They're eating off of your misery, and you're that one they can point to and say, that's messed up. And then you end up 40 and you can't have children. And as far as finding someone who's actually within your, I don't like dating, but within your courting range is very difficult. And you have to literally come to the conclusion, even if you said and didn't mean it because you were programmed that you didn't want children. Now you realize you were programmed and you do want children. It's too late. That's misery. And you can blame your lack of being astute and holding on to people, especially friends, that were not your friends. And I don't like that word either. Friends, you look at it, it's a fiend. So
Yeah, I mean,
many
but it's
people end
like
up
the
in
the
this
options are
situation.
crazy. Because I mean, like I think it's like 1 out of every 5 men between 30 and 40 has a kid. Is he's a single parent or whatever you want to call that. Like he's
Right.
disjointed from his family. So you're gonna have to be with somebody that has a kid already. And then they say a third of all divorces now are gray divorce. People
Mhm.
divorcing once they hit 65 or older. So it's
Exactly.
like the average age of divorce is 40, 42, and then a third of the people getting divorced altogether are 65. So how long are these relationships or connections supposed to like play out? Like because what
They
are people's
usually,
expectations?
they
Because
usually play
they hit
out
65 and they
until,
quit.
yeah, they usually play out until the offspring has reached a certain age, grown up, legend as it were, and then they make their move. A lot of them. Some might say, "Wow, that's a noble way of doing it." Some might say that. I don't know if that can be considered noble, because often in instances like that, um, one or both of them are going to end up lonely and alone. They haven't come to that conclusion. Hey, listen, if we want to so-called break up or get a divorce, let's just break up and become roommates. No one has to be lonely. And if we decide to get back together again, okay, great. But let's just do that. You have to have a level of calm within. The female has to have calmness, and many females don't have calmness. So this is conveyed and proliferated in a household. So you have these adversaries in a household, and when they get to a certain age, of course, they're like, okay, I got to get out of here, and they roll out, and they end up in situations where they are alone and lonely.
Yeah,
Whereas,
every time I've ever
whereas,
seen it, every time
what,
I've ever seen it though, I feel like a lot of it is like the mom ends up wanting attention. The man has to work himself to death. Then the mom doesn't get attention and entertainment from the man like she did maybe when the kids weren't there. And then they break up, and then the man, he's still young enough to be able to, go around doing shit usually. And then the woman is either stuck with the kids or, still, making
they were both they
bar
were
crawls.
both immature. And why is she looking for entertainment? I listen to listen to these silly little interviews on these so-called dating shows. You'll hear women being asked what do they want in a man, and of course they've got this list of standards. But some of those common threads, common ideals that they want is someone who can make me laugh. What do you want, a comedian? Why you're looking for entertainment and attention? Why do you need attention? That is
Yeah.
very immature. And any
Yeah.
male who doesn't recognize that and he walks into it, well, he gets what he gets. You shouldn't be wanting attention and romance. This is not Rome, for one. Why do you want these silly things? What you want and what you provide, because no one's talking about what are you providing? All about what you want. This is what I want. This is what I want. What are you providing? What are you offering? And both should be saying, this is what I have. This is what I offer the other person as far as the intangibles. This is what I'm offering. And this is what I want. So yeah, you don't just negate yourself. That's a violation too. But you say, this is what I offer and this is what I want. So both people saying that and recognizing these things, but annihilating those foolishness, romantic ideals that have thrown a lot of marriages asunder. And that's the term they use in the vows. But many marriages have been thrown asunder because of these silly fairy tale ideals. You shouldn't want a man that makes you laugh. If someone makes you laugh, okay, that happens. We make each other laugh. Someone says something funny. But you should want someone who is wise, someone who is scholarly and has the knowledge that you don't have, and they want the knowledge that they don't have. So together you have this great knowledge because you're going to have to impart that to your offspring. But you're getting these couples that are dumb AF. They
Yeah,
could
I mean,
never even have a homeschool situation because they couldn't teach their children at home.
yeah, no, I mean it's a shame, man. I was just, man, I hate to be personal, but like my brother, he made my niece test out to where she could start kindergarten at 4, and I was like, bro, y'all just don't want to teach her. It's not got nothing to do with you wanting to start her early. You just don't want to teach her, and it's just like,
Mhm.
damn, man, like I don't know. I hate to see it, but I think, yeah, people just are not interested in being mothers and fathers as like as the number one thing. As like they should be raising themselves or guiding themselves, and then guiding a child as their number one occupation or role, and on Earth. But like I feel like it's been geared in a certain way, again slanted in certain ways, like where all the mid management is taken up by women at this point, and then the upper echelon is predominantly males, but it's not the males that, it's like slanted in a way to where males that don't have the genetic prowess are the ones in the higher levels of management or in business, and then the mid management is women, and then all the peons and lower people, that's where all your run of the mill men are, and so it created like a hierarchy, or like it creates a situation where high value men as far as money, they're getting a lot of more opportunities of women, and then so they have, women have a smaller pool to pick from because they're operating in a sense where they're operating almost like shark like, where it's like I need a certain amount of money, because I mean I get it though, they don't want to be with a person when they're the breadwinner, they don't want to be the breadwinner of their family, and so it's either you're going to be with like a high business level person with terrible genetics, or you're going to be with somebody that maybe has good genetics, but they probably were forced to be an athlete or, yeah, a comedian or an entertainer of some sort, and they haven't really honed those fatherly skills, even though they might have substance. So it's like it's created a crazy recipe where women, I mean, I feel like they can run roughshod on a lot of men, because I got a friend that he is just in prison because the woman makes more money than him, and so it's like it's nothing he can really do or say. He's just like a slave in the house, and so and I think it's a lot of men at this point, the average men, because women are average, they're in the more mid-level management positions than men are at this point. So the
Mhm.
average man is subservient to woman, and then the higher upper echelon men, they're getting so many women that I think it's hard for them to even decipher. And then you have, yeah, obviously your poor genetic people that are tilting the game board their way in higher levels of business, and it's like a crazy atmosphere as far as dating, if you want to call it dating.
Yeah, that's what I say. These words, listen to the words that are used. Breadwinner, that means you compete for your bread. And, are we talking bread as in the slang money, or are we talking about bread that rises with yeast? What are we talking about here? And then, of course, with all these other terms, dating. Dating means you put a time frame on something, and within that time frame, certain things have to occur. And if they don't, you're out of date. So listen to what's being said. These words are actually telling you something about the whole system that you're in. And you mentioned the empire structure. The empire structure is not based around anything that is healthy, holistic, or balanced, if you will, or righteous. It's not. A true individual or true sentient, let's start with the man, in order to be, and I don't use value because value means you have a price, but a man must go to the heights of knowledge, things that he can do with his brain, problem solve, things that he can do with his hands, so that he can be self-efficient, and that he can literally have his pick among any viable female or woman, not female. And he doesn't have to compete to get her nor compete to keep her. And she should be wise enough to recognize that. So, for example, if she's an executive, but he's a carpenter, he's not her slave. And guys, stop going to bed without shirts. You're being taught how to do that from these media movies. If you only knew the whole history of that, a slave was naked in the bed for easy access. So when you're sleeping with no shirt, you're just basically saying you're her sex toy. So stop that crap. And any male who, has been socialized to feel less of himself because his female is working and making more money, stop that silliness. And she should recognize these facts. Is she supposed to give up that gig? Well, if he says give it up, then you should be respectful and find something better. Otherwise, work together and recognize you're only plugged into the empire for monetary purposes anyway. Make that cash and build those buffers so that you don't have to be so reliant upon the damn thing that you're trying to get away from, that's trying to hurt you in the first place. So be wise. So he's making cash and doing what he has to at home. She comes home and she's not tired. She fixes that meal because that's her purpose at home. He is solving problems and doing the accounting and making sure, hey, all of this is coming together and not getting into any type of frivolity. Let's go do this. Let's buy this. Nah, we're not trying to stay debt slaves. So it doesn't matter who's got what or whose job is what. You're stuck on the empire rules. Get out of that crap. Your purpose in the empire is to get out of it to the degree where you can plug in when you want to and unplug when you want to, and you have buffers. And one of the primary buffers in this empire is monetary. So you work together and you build that stash. You don't go against it. And you're wise enough to recognize we're not bringing any offspring in here so that they have to suffer or listen to us argue over what we don't have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's women at this point are, kind of goes back to what we were saying before we got cut off earlier. Women at this point, they're conditioned to work while they're pregnant, and the corporations are in a situation where they would rather pay for you. So they'll pay for you to go fly to California to get an abortion because they'd rather pay for that than pay for maternity leave. And so, I mean, it's in a situation where most women, they feel like they're gonna be a mom second and work around the pregnancy instead of being a mom or a woman before everything.
And any man or male who impregnates a female like that, he should be ostracized by his people because he has put an offspring at risk, in jeopardy, in harm's way through the womb of a haughty female. And that's the last thing you want to impregnate. She should recognize, no, you're not supposed to be working and pregnant. Where did that become the norm? Your derriere belongs in the home when you are carrying. You don't recognize, that's what I said earlier, the average sentient has no clue this whole purpose of pregnancy and the sensitivity of the nature of pregnancy and the spiritual, so-called spiritual or spiritual vulnerabilities that can occur and the strength that you're supposed to imbue in self prior to impregnation so that you are strong enough, like someone who is going out into a nurse that's going into the field and people have all various communicable so-called diseases. Well, when you're pregnant, guess what? Everything wants that offspring within you. And in order to get it, it's got to go through you. And so you're exposing yourself to all of these various factors. And that's why I said any man will not allow, and any respectful female or woman will respect his decision and say, okay, to the company, I either get maternity leave or I walk. And if you don't want to get maternity leave, okay, I'm out. And here's how you know you're being played. There are many countries in the empire, in the realm, that pay for maternity leave. I think Denmark is one and Germany's another. They actually pay.
Oh yeah. I mean, in Norway, they give the man a year off after the baby's born. That's what I was asking. I was going to ask you my next thing. Like, what kind of nest egg? Well, you got to set your homestead up to where at least the next 1 to 3 years that you can be home, or you can both be home.
That tells you right there you're being played. You should learn these things, that it's in all aspects of this empire. I mentioned this to you in the past, many years ago. I said, you could be on a plane and someone sitting next to you paid $5 and you paid $1,000. You're being played. Everyone should be getting maternity leave and paternity leave if you're going to be plugged into this empire, because of the fact
that
a whole year, nothing wrong with that. They make money, they print money. There's nothing wrong with it. They can find replacements. There are temps. There are people who can do the work. So that's all bogus, this whole concept of, okay, we can't do that. Sorry, that's all BS. So if that is the case, and it is, recognize it and then realize you should walk away from these situations. I'm talking to the women who will listen to this now and in the potential. Get out of those situations. Stop listening to that, okay, this paycheck is, and I can't walk away from that. Or the whole, I need this. If I don't, then no, you have to recognize your purpose here. I don't want to say that divine purpose because everyone has this divine purpose, but you don't recognize when you're in that state, you have a higher obligation.
Well, I think
And
if the
therefore,
paycheck is good, if the paycheck is good, then you should be you should definitely be transitioning into some sort of homesteading community.
yeah, if the paycheck
If
is supposedly good and there's no such thing as a so-called good paycheck, this is time that you'll never get back as you do some work for some empire structure. So think about that. I don't care what the paycheck is, you're not going to get that time back. And again, if you are carrying, if you are pregnant, there is no reason why you should be working. That shows you don't know what you're doing. You only know a tiny piece of what it means to be pregnant, and what you know is not enough. Your preacher's not going to tell you, your priest, your rabbi, your imam, they're not going to tell you. No one's going to tell you. You're more than likely, your mother never even told you. Obviously, there are women out there, elder women, who do know what I'm talking about, and they have told this to their daughters. Whether that daughter respects that, that's another thing. But there are a few still left, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. What is it called? They have a term for it in psychology. It's where something is imprinted. You know, you see that when they do animal behavior studies. Imprinting. They watch certain animals that once they're exposed to another creature, not their species, so-called species, they will imprint onto that, and they will look to that other creature as their mommy or whatever. So when you are carrying and you are exposed to all this various input, from the EMF, the unnatural, the synthetic, to the various energies coming out, or spiritual effects coming out of the people all around you, you're exposing that innocent, vulnerable offspring to all of that. For what? A paycheck? That's senseless.
no.
Say again, you broke up.
Is toxic, and saying like, what about the breast milk? I've raised dogs because you're putting a woman in it, like parasites can get into the baby, whatever.
Yeah, there are so many.
Our woman.
We didn't hear what you just said, so if you could repeat what you just said, the last minute or so. We did not hear it because you broke up.
You hear me now?
You're coming through okay.
No, I was saying, what does that do to the breast milk? Because the breast milk has to be effective.
Of course it is.
And I've heard of some women nursing for like 4 or 5 years, because they might have had multiple babies. So then they're breastfeeding for, for 5 years straight maybe. And so now it's like you're supposed to be going about your daily job and being in toxic environments, toxic workplaces, around toxic people, while you're producing, this lifeblood basically for the child.
Mm-hmm. That shows you don't care, obviously. If you cared, that means you would find out all of the things that you are supposed to know about so-called pregnancy, and how you're supposed to carry yourself while you are carrying, and what you are to be around and what you're not to be around while you're carrying. For that matter, most females don't even practice the ancient rule of separating yourself from such things as food when you are in the menstrual cycle. But you have women in restaurants making your food and they're on their period. You have women in households and they're doing the same thing. You're not supposed to be exposing yourself to food and exposing food to you while you're on that menstrual period. After that, you can go back to that, but other people are supposed to be taking care of the cooking in that household, elder females, or if it's just you and your mate, your man, then he will take care of the cooking. But you're not to go in that fridge, you're not to touch food at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Like somebody itself just commented, like, yeah, people go right back to work and then they leave the kid alone. It's just like it's basically leaving the kid to get preyed upon. Because I mean, it's just like I don't know. I feel like it's just like leaving a kid. It's like leaving a dog in a cage all day. If you're not going through like your daily motions with your child. I mean, like if you're tending to plants or tending to your environment and you got the child with you and they're growing up in those motions, it's totally different than like a homogenized, sterilized environment. In an IKEA house.
Mhm.
I think. I mean, I feel like they made brick structures for a reason. All the reasoning, but I feel like the brick structures that it doesn't really make sense as far as like mold is concerned. I feel like they don't even want women to be around cats when they're pregnant because of the parasite. But I mean, it's got to be just in the modern. It's got to be.
You have to be ready to accept all of the things that everyone is doing inappropriately or so-called wrong. You have to be able to look at that honestly, because if you're an adult, you can. But you're talking about the majority of the world, at least in the so-called Western world, and I guess the so-called Eastern world too, definitely, they're not off the hook, that are emotionally, experimentally immature. They cannot look at themselves and the things that they're doing. We have to look at ourselves and we have to look at the things that we're doing and be ready to say, okay, enough, no more. So people who are kissing their animals in the mouth, you're not supposed to have an animal in your home. There's a place for your animal. If you don't have a place for it, then no animal. This is the way it goes. Like, oh, but I want a dog. No, you're selfish. That's the same thing, what? Why do you want to have a child or a baby? You can't answer that question, no baby. So no cats in the
Yeah.
home, no dogs in the home, none of these things, especially if you're pregnant. But you have people with the baby and the dog in the bassinet. These are all forms of inappropriateness. Again, why many in the realm of history, so-called history, were separating themselves from the inappropriate behavior of many people, the troglodyte behavior patterns, separating themselves because eventually you'll either copy that or you'll end up with someone who has those types of so-called sensibilities, and they might go against yours and you'll be shocked. Like, wait, what are you doing? I never did that. My mother never did that. Why are you doing that? Oh, we used to do that in my house all the time. Well, that's disgusting. Well, you're telling someone to do
Yeah.
something that they've been raised doing and it's normal for them. So again, that's why there was a separation. That's why you have to be observant before you get in situations like this. There's no turning a blind eye to the little things. There's no turning a blind eye to the things that matter. Or thinking like
Yeah.
many people think, I don't know if it's males or females who dominates this number or stat, but usually they say it's females who have this mindset. I can change him, I can fix him. But I think it goes both ways in that regard. Many have this mindset that she'll change or I can help her change. Or she'll have a mentality, oh, he'll give that up or I'll help him change. You're not going to get people to stop doing certain things. That has to come from themselves. That has to come from within.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean,
parasites are a huge factor in all of this. And the behavior, the style of so-called eating, things that are eaten, and you are now together and your hygiene is different from their hygiene. Even in the whole so-called sexual ritual, you have a disparity of hygiene. Many women are accepting of foul hygiene. I see that a lot.
yeah, all the time.
You're not supposed to accept foul hygiene. Again, you're the house.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's maybe one of the bigger things with myself as far as like, I feel like I wasted a lot of time, and at the same time I was not guided in the early stages of my life correctly. So like a lot of things I feel like I missed out on like properly learning, and I feel like when I meet other people and they're not really ambitious to learn certain things, is already I feel like I'm automatically gonna make them feel lonely because I feel like it's a distraction. Like them being around is almost like a distraction. Like they're not interested in learning the things, and so the things that I'm focused on. So I feel like it creates like a separation, and then I just it's just hard to really fathom. It's hard to fathom having children when I haven't learned or mastered certain things yet, and I kind of look at it like I'm always trying to catch up to the person that I was supposed to be or who I would have been if I would have been guided correctly. And I think that as far as having children, like why I haven't had children or why I feel like I might not have them, is because you know I, I guess it's at the same time, as much as it's like yeah, my parents dropped the ball in certain ways. I do feel like I have internalized some of it because like I feel like the misery that they're experiencing. I feel like my dad doesn't seem like he's a person that's really glad to be a father. Or my mom, I feel like I think maybe with my brother, maybe she was, but I feel like after that, I don't think she really. I think she was more so doing it like a job than like something that she wanted to do. And like I feel like it just. I look at it like, man, I don't want it to. I don't. If I was ever going to engage in it, I don't want it to have any resemblance of that. And I think it's definitely made me feel like I have to wait or abstain altogether. I don't, and I don't really, I don't know when it comes to like you were saying as far as women not having children and because of what they went through in the early stages. I feel like I can relate to that in some ways. Like I feel like man, I there's so many things I feel like I need to correct and things I didn't do and was never taught that I got to teach myself before I can even focus on that. But there's also at the same time there is a bit of a clock ticking based on these windows, you
Hmm.
know. So as much as I could, wait till I'm 60. I think it is, it's exceptionally difficult, as the years go because I feel like I feel like I have more clarity and it's just more and more difficult to connect with people because most people I feel like have no real calm about them. So there's no way to really build anything with that. And so I don't know. It's crazy that a lot of people do have children. I feel like that should have waited or maybe shouldn't have had kids. And then I feel like a lot of people that don't have them or that are waiting, they maybe would have been more suitable parents. But at the same time, they're just like really, really concerned about repeating the same problems. And I don't really know. I feel like the market is it's a crazy market on both ends. A lot of women have children. Like I was saying, a lot of men, 1 in 6 men have a kid. So it's like it's a lot of dysfunction out here. And how much further are we going to reach back if I was to be with a younger woman? Because like I said, 30% of Gen Z, they identify as LGBTQ bisexuals. So it's like I got to wait the whole generation after them maybe, and then I don't even know how I would even be looking at it by the time I get.
You're in the, as they say, the days of Noah. He had to look amongst the various types of beings and find wives for his sons. So maybe that is the case. But you use the term market, and maybe therein is the problem. You shouldn't be looking at a market. You look at some of there's an author and critic by the name of Julianne Kristeva. I'm only quoting her only because, not to promote feminism, but I'm only quoting her because she has said some profound things, such as the whole market system and how endogamies are made. That's basically like incest. But in this instance, the endogamy would be between the same gender. How females only associate with other females, and that does lead to homosexuality in some, or males do the same thing in certain circumstances, but it's more of a literally marketplace mentality. So they end up either competing for certain females or taking the females of someone who is allegedly a friend. So this kind of whole market is something you're not supposed to be in, this market thing. I got to find a viable good that has value to it. Again, with the whole value thing. And anything that has value has obsolescence. It's designed to become decrepit or depreciate. So why are you putting yourself into those realms, into those categories of something that has a value? And you hear women saying that, well, wait a minute, aren't you saying that I have a value and a viability that will only last a certain amount of time? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that your biology is dictating in this so-called market that you're in this empire, is dictating your viability as well as your attractive appeal. But what should be looked at and focused on is the fact that you recognize and respect your purpose, and you only will associate with the complementary gender that does the same for his purpose and his function, and together you both know what you to do together. And you plan before you do, especially actions that are going to bring about offspring. That's the best scenario. But we don't see that because we're in a market type scenario where you go for what you think is the best. And if you find that it's not, you put yourself back out in the market again. You try to upgrade and see if you can get better or do better. From a man's point of view, that's what usually occurs. Women will usually attempt to find better men, as opposed to doing anything for herself. If she does anything for herself, it is for herself, not for, and that self change or upgrade is usually innocuous. It has nothing to do with anything internal based on her core or soul. She's, you hear today a lot of people saying, oh, I'm in therapy. And that's great, but it's definitely not doing anything, obviously. What needs to be happening is truth evaluation of what you're doing, what you have done, and what you've come through, and what you refuse to continue with self. And you're not going to find the cure in another individual. The same thing goes for a man. You're not going to find the fix for what ails you in another individual.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we don't have matchmakers. We don't have families. When I was living in Egypt, it was like you said, that people had to have a dowry to get married. They'd have to have certain things to get married, and then people didn't have any problems with like staying with the family, like where they'd have like a whole complex, maybe a 4-story, look like an apartment building. The first floor would have the grandparents because they don't want to climb steps. The second floor would be the parents, and then the upper floors would be the children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, they're keeping the family together. Everybody sees each other. There's no loneliness. Everybody has a role inside of the family, inside the house, and the house is made of brick. It's not made of it's not stick built with mold in it. And some people do get, there's some like vestiges of the correct way of doing things. It's just that it's hard to find like a really holistic approach. It's like, I'm not about to join the cult of Islam in order to get that.
Right.
So it's tough.
That's an unhealthy perspective as well. Any type of religion, if you have to use religion, again, you're doing the same thing as taking a drug. And no, I'm not referring or making homage to Marx. I'm just saying it literally has the capability of twisting your thinking like a drug would. So you wouldn't use religion to assist you in your life. Some people use it for that purpose and they get stuck on it. That's not what you should do. There are other avenues outside of so-called religion that you can utilize. Most of them just come from within you and your connection to the Most High or to the creator, originator, creator. That's where that comes from. But these are conscious efforts that you, or aware efforts that you have to make These are not efforts that come as a result of motivation from a religion. And that's what most devotees to religions look for. They look for outside motivation from their church, from fellowshipping.
Yeah, I don't really know who it's not like you can I don't know if you can make the matches for hundreds of people, because how much time does it take? It would take care to
I
really.
matchmake, but I only matchmake on a small scale.
Yeah, because you can't streamline something like that because it requires care.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like,
So
if we
what do
only
we
if
have
we only have
now? We have
if we
these
only have
websites.
one pharaoh per 7 billion people, you can't make all the matches. Like,
My focus is on making matches that will be profound. So their union, these brains, two brains coming together, and the potential offspring that they will introduce to the realm will make changes. You don't need this critical mass.
so that's the ultimate. I don't want to say job, but that's the ultimate focus, is as far as creation is concerned. Like, I mean, you could create beautiful art that has a message in many ways, but the ultimate art and science would be to create a body, or facilitate the creation of a body that that helps to transform the world, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That,
everything
that,
else.
that's supposed to be and should be the focus and aspiration of every so-called parent. That, I made the bed ready, I made the realm ready in my home for this arrival. They're not going to want for anything that is of substance because it's all here for them. You do that when a so-called guest is arriving. You don't let them come into a dirty, dilapidated house. You make sure your home is presentable and ready to accommodate a guest, especially if one's going to stay there for a short amount of time. So this is what people are supposed to do, but you don't just wait until you are in a so-called marriage to do that. Remember, years ago, I said, what is every man and woman? They are the potential fathers and mothers in training. All the things that you do, all the things that you are learning are for that purpose. And whether you do or you do not procreate or regenerate, you still have that capability. You respect that purpose within you.
We're contributing to the next generation, or a generation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This faulty living, this careless, frivolous way of living, it's going to stop. It's coming to a close, and you don't want it to come to a close violently and abruptly, but it is. The recognition of one's own actions is the best way for this to come to an end, to come to a close. But doing these repeat behaviors over and over and over again does you no good, and it does no good for, if you are going to bring forth offspring. But primarily for yourself, we're not talking about if or potential, we're talking about you before offspring. You have to prepare your vessel and be respectful of the purpose that you have right now. And you know your potential. You have many potentials. One of them, and I'm talking to you directly, one of them is to be a father, whether you choose to do so or not. But that's a potential that's there. In the meantime, this is not a potential. You are in the now, and you have a responsibility to know your purpose, to rectify anything that has not been rectified, and repair anything that has a need to be repaired, respecting everything about your vessel and your living, and then eliminating any type of affiliations or associations that you know full well are contributing to all of the things that we've just been talking about and worse. Those are the things that are difficult to change because most have affiliations to nation or group or religion or some whatever, and they're always deadly or poisonous and detrimental. Get rid of those affiliations. They have nothing to do with you.
So if I was to be my whole self in my lifetime from here on out, where do you think that's taking me? Like, what am I supposed to, like? What is my purpose? Is it just to facilitate a community, or like? And do you think have I met the people that are going to be in the community, or am I going to meet them?
Both.
Okay.
You know,
So,
how you met me, in a sense, you were looking for other outlets and content, who knows what, and you were going through Dr. Sebi, and then eventually you moved over to Dr. Africa, and you're going all these various routes. And then somehow, some way, you got a referral, and then you came and you saw me. But it was that connection through others. So we are portals, we are catalysts. So there are those who are going to be waiting for you as that catalyst, as that portal. And so it goes with you too. You'll be waiting for, or soon to meet or encounter those portals, those catalysts that will help to bring about, especially if you maintain this path, the righteous path, you will definitely come to the point where the community that is supposed to be built will be built. But it's not being built because there are things that you haven't addressed yet. I've been to that place where you are, and I've seen those people, very detrimental, poisonous individuals, I'll just put it that way. Some of them are not what you think they are.
oh, it's some ghouls up here. It is some ghouls. It's only 200 people up here, you know, and 100, and I, you know, what I mean, and I'm probably with chimeric entity or whatever, but these are some ghouls up here, man. I mean, I feel like it's crazy that this many people with this much land, they've only done what they've done with it. It's like the craziest thing to me, because some of these people have massive acreage, and then there's like, you know, the next town over is like 2,500 people, and everybody in that town has a 5-acre lot. And I'm like, how are none of these people self-sufficient? Why are all these people still going and driving to town and working regular jobs? And it's like, it's crazy, man. The way the land has been mismanaged is insane, man.
Well, they're doing what they're supposed to do. Most of them, if not all of them, are parasites. They're not autochthonous, they're not aboriginal, they're not from that. So they're doing what they're supposed to do as parasites do. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. And that's why they've made up enclaves. You look at these enclaves you're going to see more enclaves popping up, but these are all parasitic. Those have been around for years. But these are not people from these lands. So that's what I said, you have to be careful where you are. There are a lot, as soon as you start to build up something, there are going to be a lot of those who are going to attempt to sabotage.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't really have anywhere that I can go. Like.
No, I didn't say move. I didn't say leave. You can influence what happens around you without your words, just by your presence. But when you bring in numbers, that also helps. Not much you can do when you're by yourself, but you start bringing in the numbers, and that makes a difference.
I mean, it's tough because people are really not about their life, man. They're not about the agrarian rural life. A lot of people, it's tough. Like, you think it's going to have to come to a point where people are just forced into it?
That was part of my response or answer, but then again, there are those who are. You just have to literally ask, like in this chat room, in this room, there are a certain amount of sentience. Ask them, how many of you, you know, obviously it's an off the cuff answer and you have to take it for what it's worth, but ask them, how many of you are ready to make these changes and are preparing, even if you're not ready right now, to make changes within yourself to at least be either part-time agrarian, so you recognize what goes into a community and that you're willing to participate. And if you lack skills, you are doing something now to obtain skills. That's the question. So if that's you, you can say yes in the room, or you can get on the microphone and make a statement, or ask a question. That's one of the purposes of this whole virtual connection. Use it while we can, and use that to help facilitate the building of the community. Otherwise, I mean, there are other ways. It has been done. We look back in the past and we see groups that have been made. They didn't have internet. They used print press. They used word of mouth. They used good old walking down the street. Obviously, cities help, being in cities, but you don't have to be in the city to do these things.
Do
But
you think
we have this internet convenience, so use it, utilize it while you can.
do you think I'm where I'm supposed to be though?
For now, I don't detect that place. The only way that you can convert that place, it's like where you came to visit me, where I was at. That place was loaded with, as you put it, ghouls all around. But yet you saw what I was doing there. I never got attacked by any ghouls. They came up. A lot of them tried to steal farm equipment. Some did steal farm equipment. Others tried to do sabotage, but it backfired on them. Many people lost their lives attempting to harm, but I didn't use a gun to get them.
Yeah, I remember you were saying that. The ambulance went by and you were like, I'm transforming this area.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that's what you could do there. You think about, the so-called history of so-called colonization, which is just parasitism. And isn't that what so-called settlers do? They come into an area. You don't need guns to do so like the parasites do. You can do so with even greater force, as long as you are on a true, righteous, actual path. Otherwise, if you have ulterior motives, the bigger fish will take over. Because you might think you're evil and wicked. There's always somebody more evil and more wicked, and they will take over what you have.
yeah, I think that's been like I guess that's always what it is, the David versus Goliath type thing, like to use a poor metaphor, but like it always just seemed like this is a lot to try to transform or to bring people out here. It's a lot of space, it's a lot of potential, and I think it could be a really amazing place with the right people. But like, I was always just like walking away because I'm like, this seems like so much because I wasn't for over the years. I just wasn't tapping into the more unseen, and then also I wasn't, I was being lazy and taking things for granted, thinking that things would be just staying put.
No, nothing stays put. Cabins fall apart, roofs leak, everything changes. So you take it upon yourself to do what you can with your own hands. You may not know carpentry, but you can teach yourself carpentry. You don't need to have, yeah, it would be optimum to be in an apprenticeship situation, but you don't have that. So you have the internet, and I'm sure there might be some libraries in the neighboring cities. Get a book from the library or get videos from the library, or just, use the internet. It's right there in your hands. And learn some basic carpentry skills. Make sure you have the right tools, or work with what you have if you don't have the finances for it. Fix up that cabin. Literally have a true garden. I know when someone says, oh yeah, I got a little garden, that means you probably have maybe a plant. And so if
Well, man,
a real garden, you will literally.
only thing I've ever known how to grow is weed. I never really knew how to grow. I never had any success with anything else.
Well, that's something. That's nothing. That's something. It is a plant. So, you can grow that and you can survive off of it. And I don't mean sell it. I mean, you can literally eat it, especially the male plant. You can literally eat that. So that's not nothing, but you can expand that, grow any type of food that is going to not just sustain you, but nourish you, and get that practice in. And then this is what you'll teach those who will be part of that community, those who want to teach or learn. Obviously, many will come to the community that will be built, and they'll have these skills already. So you'll be sharing and learning from others as you share and teach.
So So I mean, I could buckle down. Like that's what I mean. Like that's kind of where my mind was just to focus on making this a more hospitable place for more people than just myself. And I mean, I didn't want to punch a brick wall. So I mean, you think I have the ingredients to be able to transform this place to host, community.
There's always that potential, but you have to put a time frame on it and then stick with it. Be respectful of the things, the promises that you make to yourself and others, and carry them out, literally. And don't get caught up in that. I don't even want to label it, but there's a mindset that permeates a lot of people, regardless of whatever hue, wealth, background. It's called this fear of writing, fear of putting things in a journal. That's why all of my mentees, it's mandatory that they actually journal. Not this new age journal crap. I mean a real journal. Go out and buy a book and use a pen. You're not using Notepad or WordPad or any other pad. You're using a real pad and make an actual journal. You run out of space, buy another book, and it's to be orderly. And I show them how to journal, how to do all of the cognitive functions that will manifest themselves into tangible reality. So you do the same thing, and you'll see a huge difference. You'll see actual difference. Put a time frame on it. Without that time frame, nothing happens. It's all talk.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I was thinking in the next 5 years, I got to do something in the next five.
It should be
I have
that.
I have a checklist of things that I have to accomplish.
It shouldn't take 5 years. I visited your place and you've shown me around. You've got a lot going for it already. You don't just clear out the clutter, and you already have a lot already there. You will attract those who can assist, and that's one of the other things you want to do. You look into your past experiences. It'll also help you see that the actions and the activities and the associations that you have are really facades. It's putting people to the test sometimes. Those people who claim to be in your corner or your friend, and they wouldn't lift a finger or a hammer to help you. So you recognize this, and remember, you were in sports for a while. How many of those people on those teams would literally come out, and you're not asking for money, but just come out and lend some elbow grease? Guarantee you none.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You recognize these things. It helps you. It builds you and helps you learn. Okay, those are not affiliations that I want to repeat. I've worked on earth-bag buildings with people, and they weren't getting paid. I wasn't getting paid, and we were working on someone else's home. I was getting an education on working with earth bags, how to separate earth, how to test the viability of the earth. Too much clay, too much water, too much rocks. How to tamp, how to build a tamp, how to fill a bag. I mean, I've worked on laborious or rigorous efforts before, but I'd never built any kind of earth structure before. I worked on straw bale structures before. And the purpose is not pay. I'm not trying to plug into any empire. And I was helping someone else build theirs, and we've kept in touch. So when I want to build mine, I've got people that I can call and they'll come. And even if they don't, I know from the experience that I've had, I know how to do these things. So you might want to do that as well. You're in the kind of sort of the Pacific Northwest. There are some places in Oregon, be careful in that spot. And there are places further south that have not year-round, but often yearly seminars and workshops. You can learn how to work with straw bale. And in your area, that's perfect because it's kind of wet there. You can work with straw bale and build onto some of the buildings that you have, or build a building. Start with a shed, something simple and basic. And once you do that, that's all you need. That's all the will needs is a symbol. Once that symbol comes to fruition, it's all momentum from that point on. You need these little symbols. Once you give yourself that symbol, you're ready to go. It's, we'll see your Instagram site and you'll be doing IG lives and we'll be seeing your structures. I'm working on this structure now. And oh, by the way, let me introduce you to some of my helpers here.
So do you see yourself opening something like that in Latin America or Central America?
Not just there, but around it. That's the thing. You asked if that's the spot. I said, that's one of them. You're not to just dig in and get complacent. You are supposed to set up a location and then from there move on and do this around the realm.
Take the show on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So what are our timelines looking like as far as like periods of I guess constriction and then periods of things opening up? Like
you look at it in terms of how you acquire and absorb. How long does it take you to acquire and absorb the skills that you need for blank? You fill in the blank. So let's say you're going to start with your garden structure. You want to build a raised bed and you want to put certain types of soil sediment and layers, not just your typical just buy some soil and some NHK and just throw it in there. No, you want to do it so that everything is complete. You want to find out how to do that, and that shouldn't take that long. That can be, you have these mini courses. You can learn that in no time, or you can teach yourself that and then do it. I built raised beds, never having any experience with building raised beds before. And it was perfect, literally measured perfectly. I didn't even have the tools for it. And I had to borrow tools. I walked down the road and, some say, oh my God, you're crazy. You actually asked a bunch of, the terms they use, negative terms like redneck and so. I said, no, I had no fear. I just walked to the place before I went there and I had the sense of what's going on. And before I stepped onto anyone's so-called property, I felt before I went on, and if I got that go ahead, I walked down the road. If I didn't, I bypassed that property and went to the next place. So I knew who was receptive. And if people have animals, and most of them have dogs, I could tell the animals told me, hey, it's okay, come on over. And some had horses. The horses, they came over and they're like, hey, it's okay, I'm not being abused, come on over. And I went to those houses. If a dog came up and it was like, I'm going to bite your blah, blah, blah off, nah, I bypassed that place. The owner of the animal are kind of mirror reflections of one another.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just asking, I guess, about the timelines because I remember when COVID was happening and everything, that whole process with the forced vaccines and everything. I remember you were like, it's going to be shut down in this period, then it's going to open up in this period. And I was just wondering if you had anything that you could bestow as far as that, like what we're facing as far as any clamp downs and when things
Well, yeah,
open up.
there's always going to be a part 2 and part 3. It's not about the action. It's not about the so-called thing. It's about seeing how far can we take with these idiots? How far can we go with them? Let's tell them the air is bad and they need to wear gas masks. Or even better, that they can't come outside because the air is bad between noon and 6. And if you fall for it, it's like, okay, your shoe's untied and I made you look. So that's power. And all you have to do is use, literally, and I don't use this term a lot, so-called common sense. Think about it. What is the mask for? The masks are usually worn by so-called surgeons or people who work around food, and it's to stop the little aerosol, so-called aerosols that might come out of your mouth. It's not to stop anything from coming in, but it's worn temporarily and for a particular purpose, not up and down the street, in your car, at work. You're killing yourself. You're smothering yourself. You're breathing in what you should be releasing. I had a client, and she owned a bakery, and I would go visit her, and she'd have her mask on. She would take it off when I came in. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. I don't want you to get in trouble. She owned the bakery. It wasn't like she was an employee, but she could have gotten in trouble with her customers. Someone walking by, and some people are like, she's not wearing a mask. And then she goes and tells someone, this is in the suburban area. All she had to do was go and put that out. Helen doesn't wear a mask at her bakery. Don't buy anything from her. So then her customership would go down. So I just told her, no, you don't have to worry about it. I don't mind. But she took it off to show me the acne that had built up around her mouth.
Yeah.
As a result of wearing this synthetic material. And I said, okay, well, you're in a kind of sticky situation, no pun intended, because you started something and your customers expect it, and now they only come in because of that fact, because they themselves are not wise enough to recognize some things just don't make sense. Your so-called immunity depends on what you do to it internally. And if you're eating donuts and ice cream, well, yeah, you can pick up anything, not just so-called COVID.
Yeah, you could pick up a bad mood and
Right.
then turn into a personality, and then you turn into your life.
Exactly. And you're eating hormones and who knows what else. And so you're worried about some so-called bioagent. And then you go and get a vaccine that's supposed to, no one was thinking. And that's what those who were thinking recognized that, and I said this before, it's not the critical mass, it's not this massive catastrophe that's going to occur. It's the follow the whatever that will cause the major problems, because like being pushed into a train, inside the car in rush hour, and you don't even want to get in that train. You just happen to be in that crowd and you just get caught up in it. That's the danger of this follow without logic. Everyone just doing, and if you stand out, you're easy to target. But everyone else is doing without question. That's what went on then. We see all of these folks, some were saying, yeah, but then on the same side, they're hypocritical and they went and did it like, oh, I don't want to err on the side of this, so I'll just put the mask on. And then they took it a next step. They didn't see how far that they were willing to go inside in themselves, and they took the so-called vaccine and boosters. I'm like, well, just to be on the safe side. No, you have to think. You're getting something that's passing your barriers and going directly into you.
I mean, this is like it's in the same realm. To tie it back to the beginning of the conversation, it's like
James
doing that is.
said something very important. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to
No,
just point that out. He said, and driving alone in the car with a mask.
yeah,
That is, yeah.
yeah, no, it's the same. It's the same as women going to hospitals to have their babies. I mean, it's like the same thing. Like, getting vaccines or whatever. It's like these constant waves of it, and then I guess monkey see, monkey do, in a sense. Like if we're surrounded by so many incubator babies and all of that, so many people that are just clones basically, and they follow the program. I guess people just like, all right, well, they're doing it. All these women are dying in childbirth, but it's because they probably weren't supposed to have kids because they were not supposed to exist to begin with. Why did so many women die in childbirth? Supposedly all those years, for the so-called pioneers and whatnot.
Because you're in the Rockefeller system, and you can't just blame Rockefeller, but you can and you cannot. They were the ones he and his cohort were the ones who took over the so-called holistic industry and killed it, and then replaced it with the toxic pharmaceutical allopathic industry. And of course, what went with that is the hospital system, et cetera, the triage system, all of these things, and the medicating system and the procedure system, the so-called standard of care system, all of that coming from one particular industrialist. And if you are pregnant, you are to research everything. If you decide, okay, you want to go, have your baby in a hospital, what do you know about that hospital? No one's really thinking. Most people don't. They don't.
I think
truly think.
that should eliminate sex from the beginning. Like, ask the woman, do you want to have a natural birth? Oh no. Well, I'm sorry. We just be friends.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no joke aside or joking aside. That makes sense because that's your offspring, your shared offspring. And yes, you have a major say in it. You're like, do you want natural childbirth? No, I want an epidural. Put me out. I've heard women actually say that. I don't want to feel all that. No, I saw what happened to my girlfriend and she got messed up, and now I'm not doing that. I'm not going through that pain, literally, and they want the drugs. So if you allow that,
I mean,
then
I seen
you're
this one
crazy
woman.
to actually go with that. You shouldn't have impregnated that in the first place. And
Yeah.
secondly, that's what I was referring to the woman, the mother. Stop not thinking. Recognize that a hospital is a business. It's part of a corporate structure. It's possibly part of a nonprofit, but it's still a corporate structure. It's there for profit only. Everything in there is for profit. Try turning on the TV or getting an aspirin. That just costs you. Everything is there for profit. And if you don't recognize that, you're putting yourself at major risk and your baby as well. You don't go into these places for that purpose without knowing what you're stepping into. This is a business, and you're going to be charged for everything, and they're going to try to upsell and put a lot of things on your bill before you leave there. So
Yeah,
why are you exposing yourself to that?
it's like a medicinal hotel or like medicinal Disneyland or something.
Yeah, everything, every ride you get off of, there's a gift shop waiting for you to purchase something from. These are the places that you're in. And if you don't recognize that this is wickedness, the good and evil factor, you blinded yourself. You're living in bliss. Bliss is stupidity. It's a stupor. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be wise. So you will say to yourself, and I have a business mind too. So therefore, if this is a business, then I want to make sure I get the 1948 treatment, meaning I want my private room. I want to be catered. I want to have my menu. So the food that comes in, I order. You're not going to tell me, oh, no, you have to get from the cafeteria. No, I get my menu. You've seen these things in movies. They show you these silly Hollywood movies where the woman is pregnant and she stays for about a week or more in the hospital. She gets catered to. Family comes and visits. They bring flowers. But now it's an outpatient thing. You pop it out, you go home. What happened between then and now?
I mean,
The
I seen this
industry,
one
the
woman I
industry
know.
is set up that way.
One woman I know, she did her makeup and nails before the C-section, so that when she woke up and took the pictures, she would be having makeup and nails. I was like, no, it's like prom. I'm like, oh, it's over. I'm like, this is where we at. Half the women are getting C-sections, and they're getting their nails done for it. Oh, it's over.
And again, the procedure, which is part of the business, it's part of the thing on the menu. Did you research what's involved in it? Did you know that it is elective for the most part? Most of these OBGYNs will recommend that. Now it's very popular, and nothing should be popularized. We're dealing with life.
Why do they call it cesarean section?
Allegedly, the so-called emperor of the so-called Roman Empire of the past was delivered that way, cut through his, the mother's
He got a big titty.
yeah. So cesarean, Caesar section. Allegedly, there might be other tales, but that's one of them. That's why they claim the name stuck. But only in certain circumstances. Even in the cases of breech complication, you don't need to do cesarean. It's only in the extreme circumstances that procedure should be done. But it's done frivolously.
Yeah, but all that can be avoided if you're paying attention throughout the pregnancy and you can feel the baby.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's not taught either. You have a lot of dim-witted grandparents, grandmothers, basically, because I'm not going to blame the grandfather. That allegedly women will tell him that's not your place. Okay, if it's not his place, then who's supposed to teach her? Her grandmother, her aunts, her aunties are supposed to be telling her, okay, this is how you do this, and this is how you don't do this, and if you want to carry this way, you do this, you sit this way, you eat this type of food, you don't eat this, because they have done it and they know it works, as opposed to foolishness. They can, and that's how it's supposed to be done, and they pass this information on. That's not done. So most women who are pregnant have no clue about the pregnancy. It's just, I know I'm pregnant, and I know I want this thing out of me.
So what is it though? Like with the cesarean section is the ode to Rome, but like what I've heard that also that all the birth certificates are in Rome or underneath the Vatican or something like that.
Well, yeah, because you're registered. That's why they want you to register your birth and name the baby as soon as it pops out.
So the Vatican is the center of the world, kind of, right now.
Well, now it is, yeah.
Man.
Because
So, I mean,
within that again, and I mentioned this, you just re-listen to all those listening now. I put out a key. So if you were listening, you'll know that behind these places of antiquity or under, in some instances, there's an entity. And it's not some thing from a movie. They're actually the entities that still are around. They're still there, and people go there to pay homage, and they drink the energy from the visitors. And of course, they obviously drink outrightly whatever is offered to them in the physical form, usually in the form of blood.
Are they 3D entities?
I have no clue, but probably so, but obviously they take what they can and take what they get and take what they desire and take what they want. But they have a lot of service people working for them. So from the holy city, so-called holy city of Rome, to the so-called holy lands, to you name any place that is supposedly ancient or sacred that people go to and pay homage to. That's why in most of your Catholic churches, they have a relic in the altar, some type of bone, and you pay homage to, you go up to that altar, and each relic is associated with something in the Vatican. So it's kind of like this parasitic connection. But within these major places, there actually is an entity. And when I say entity, I'm referring to either a body of actual sentient beings, in the sense not like us, but actual living, breathing creatures. People, certain types of people, they're not like us, but they might look like us. And they live within these places, and they literally take the energy that comes from the parishioners or the devotees, etc. And of course, all these lower echelons that work for them, that are appointed, they give the illusion that you selected them, but no, you have to be carefully handpicked or just be of a certain family lineage to be part of that management, mid-level management.
So, man, while we got you here, I wanted to get some more clarity.
Oh yeah,
as far as like about Islam coming out of the Vatican. I mean,
it did. Khadijah's brother, brother was a Catholic Monsignor. And Khadijah is the wife of Muhammad. She's like, 15, 20 years older than him. So his sugar mama, basically. And I don't mean disrespect for those who practice. I'm down on all religions, so there's no respect of religions. I call them all out. But, yeah, he's the one who influenced Muhammad to become religious and to take on this whole aspect of piety, but it came through his wife. His wife was the one pushing him up, saying, okay, according to the story and the legends, because she saw great things in him, and she saw him as a charismatic religious figure, or at least a religious leader figure.
So you're talking about the guy with Raqqa, right? Because he's the one that like validates Muhammad, right?
Well, no, he was more of the one who was like scholarly. He had all of the knowledge. So if you got someone who has all the knowledge, all you have to do is just tap into them. You don't have to give them cred, but you just tap into their knowledge, and then you just spout it out, and everyone looks at you, and they don't look at that person standing next to you. That's the shadow. But it was through his wife that all of this occurred.
So Raqqa is her relative. So you're saying Khadijah, because that's right, because it's Khadijah's family.
That's from her family, allegedly her brother. And he was a Monsignor in the Catholic, the so-called Holy Roman Catholic cult, whatever. I forget what it was called then, but it wasn't a church.
Because at the time, like the Vatican is just, I guess, just considered a portal. It's not like the management hadn't changed the name, I guess, right? Because it's a period, I guess, right there where the Vatican is existing because Rome existed, and then. So then you got Constantine converts everybody into Christianity, supposedly. So before that, though, the Vatican was already there, and they were already doing what they were doing.
Yeah, so Islam is an offshoot out of Christianity. You can say that Catholicism, which is Christianity, created Islam. The black stone pays homage to the daughter, and of course to Khadijah, but it pays primarily daughter worship. So it's to one of his three daughters. I think it was Alat, and so it pays homage to her, the black stone. But within that black stone is an entity. And I don't mean something scary and floating around. It's an entity. Often these entities, depending on the circumstances, often these entities will be housed in a sentient, because the vessel deteriorates, and so they do certain rituals. You've heard of the Abramelin ritual, and they will transfer the entity into the ready and willing and primed host. In other words, this host has to go through can be exposed to certain things, definitely cannot be exposed to people, cannot be exposed to words and voices during the first 7 years. Only certain voices it can be exposed to, the child can be exposed to, and eat certain foods only. And then after a certain age, then it's ready to host the entity, which just continues on in its earthly form.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like that movie Hereditary when they were inserting the demon Payman in through the line of the boys.
I've never seen that, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, it was like the family had committed to it. I guess they maybe got some things from like transferring the demon over generations, and as much as they tried to resist, it was like written in blood. So ultimately, it ends up happening. They end up transferring the demon into the next generation. But
you ask yourself, why do they make these movies? So that in the fictional realm and the way the brain structures itself, it will automatically think of this as entertainment and fiction, not as fact.
so when you say the black stone, are you saying like the in Mecca,
The Kaaba, the Kaaba stone, the Kaaba, right? And it's a vortex. So that's why you have people in white going around in a certain format, and they activate a vortex, and during these hajjs. And the same thing occurs in certain rituals. Christianity has certain rituals, usually associated with a blood rite. The liturgy, I think it's the liturgy. The Eucharist, and I think that's part of the liturgy. It's a reenactment of the cannibalism and the blood rite. So, and they even say it in the wordings, whether in Latin or English. This is, repeat. I forget how it goes, but it's this is my body. Drink, this is my body, this is my blood, or something like that. And then he breaks the so-called vicar, or the vicarious one. It could be a Monsignor, could be a priest, could be a bishop, whatever. He breaks it and then drinks the blood, the wine that they pull from the sacristy. It has to be sacristy wine. And he drinks that. He takes the gold or brass pallet, and then he proceeds to take the blood rite from the supplicants. So they go up for the communion and they receive the flesh.
So,
passing the spirit amongst the realm. So pour out my spirit, meaning pour out blood and flesh, and they'll eat of it. Folks don't know what they're doing, and they're blinded by ritual and rite and vanity, which religion purports and promotes vanity. Mine is better than yours, or whatever. So kind of like a sports team, and that's why many people who are devotees or practitioners, they don't delve deep, and also religions don't promote questions, true profound questions, nor logic for that matter, or critical thinking.
So it's the same thing with the so-called Jews with the black cube and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, is it Saturn worship? I mean, the whole thing is like, it seems to be goddess worship though, ultimately though, because like it's like the hand of Fatima, the hand of Miriam, or the hand of Mary. It's like the three Abrahamic religions, and they all kind of ultimately are goddess worship. I mean, Islam on its face is a moon. I mean, they have a crescent moon as the symbol. I mean, like I guess you call it pagan, Arabic or Arabish culture was the goddess worship through with that moon worship and everything, and then the so-called Jews being matrilineal now, and then obviously Christian, and then Christianity having the, the worship
The Queen
of
of
Mary.
Heaven.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because, like you said, all Christianity is effectively Catholicism.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, when it comes to this kind of like deeply ingrained spiritual programming, can you even be with a person like that?
You can, if that individual, if that sentient is ready and willing to question all the things that they have accepted as real or factual or have brought into their world and made part of their fabric. If they're not ready to question that, especially where there's doubt, kind of like an attorney or a jury, if doubt is brought up, then you have to wisely question it. That's reasonable doubt. But if they're not willing and ready to do that, they're lost in the sense, let someone else handle it. Don't you attempt to handle it or attempt to change it. And definitely don't impregnate it. And the same goes for the woman. Don't try to change a male who is staunch about his so-called religious beliefs.
It seems like they were all manufactured around the same time, because like you got Christianity coming through, and then right around that same time of Muhammad, you have, right, isn't the mass conversion happening of all the Yaphethites? They all,
Basically.
so you had the manufacturing of modern day Judaism, and then also Islam, and then Christianity, kind of as well. They all kind of spawned in the same kind of 200-year period or so.
Within a
And
time frame, within a particular time frame, but they're all interconnected.
so I mean, like this is like a gang though, and then that's what I mean. Like it makes it even more difficult for people to actually connect, because you're dealing with this spiritual program, and it's like malware, and like it's like you got all these people with random kids. You got, a lot of people that, like I said, supposedly 10% of males don't even want to work and are unemployed. And you got, 1 in 6 males have a kid. And then I don't know what the case is for women over 30. Everybody's getting divorced at between 40 and 42, and they're not getting married till 31. So it's like, and then a third of the divorces are all 65 plus. So what's being communicated to us through the numbers is marriage don't last, and it's a small window if you do partake in it, probably in all likelihood. And then if you have kids, it'll be haphazardly with multiple people. The chances are pretty great. Like 1 in 6. And it's like I don't. I mean, it's crazy. Like, how do you? And then like, on top of that, you got the societal thing, the barriers. Like I said, like Christian, Muslim, uh, Hebrew Israelite gang, all these gangs.
Mhm.
And then so it's like, how do you even to really unpack that is really tough, man. I guess it's like the
Not
people that may
really.
be in your corner are.
It's not really tough. No more than a parent who claims they can't stop their child from listening to harmful input, so-called music, or doing certain things because they use the excuse, I can't be monitoring them 24/7. I gotta work. If an animal can monitor and safeguard and protect their offspring, then what's wrong with you, a supposed higher creature or higher format sentient? Why cannot you? Well, again, that shows that they are definitely not willing to work hard enough. I didn't say try, because try never happens. So they're not willing to put in what is required to protect their young. And so by the same token, they're not, when I say they, pardon that, but most are not willing and ready to turn off all of this stuff. I don't care what religion it is, what religion you came through in your household. You have to question that. If a religion cannot be questioned, if a government cannot be questioned, if everyone hides themselves above reproach, then you don't want any part of that. You're supposed to question everything. That's part of the whole good and evil complex. That's part of being like them. The Genesis chapter, the Genesis verse, pardon, that says, and now man has become like one of them, or one of us. I said them because, we're not them, but who is this us? And what does it mean? What qualities are we to have in our rationality, in our thinking, in our logic, in our ways of determining self and how we are to motivate what's within and how we are to eliminate that which we shouldn't have within. We have the capacity for this intellectual, this intelligence, this this smartness. We have all of that within us, but are we utilizing it to its best, to our best ability, and to its nth degree? No. So that says what? If you are pulled by the religious input from your household, the one you grew up in, that means you are not practicing what true balance between or observation of good and evil. You are literally going with what could possibly be wicked, because if you check it out, most people who follow in the same religious lineage of their families, it always breaks down, it always perverts. It doesn't stay. It might be in that first generation, all idyllic and loving, and then all of a sudden it breaks down and you ask, well, wait, we're a Christian household, or we're a Jewish household. What happened? How did this all break down? Because it was meant to. It was built for obsolescence. It was built to break down. It was built to come to tragedy, especially when you don't question it. Try questioning your pastors. Try going to your church and just, not being in defiance, but just asking profound questions. You don't have to embarrass yourself or them. Maybe you want to do it in private. Have an appointment with them and watch what happens. Watch sometimes you get heated, red face, or whatever color the person can change. You might get escorted out of their office. They might keep their eye on you now, because you've been asking questions. They don't want you spreading that. You just never know. Just from asking questions. That's your red flag. That's your input, your impetus to say, okay, time to get out of this.
Yeah. Man,
and not to go to another religion, which many people do. I've known people who have left, for example, in the world of in evangelical religion or so-called religions, whether it's Baptist or something, they didn't like their treatment at one church and they left that church, but you would think that they would have left that whole complex. No, they just find another church and join that one, as if they can't exist without this church, these churches, like it's oxygen.
Does it get ingrained in the blood? Because I've heard people say some people are genetically atheists or whatever, or genetically godless or whatever, however you want to look at it.
You cannot separate all of these factors of being. So your thoughts are automatically ingrained in the so-called DNA into your structure. Where do you think they are? In a cloud system? Possibly, but no, they're all part of you. So your thoughts, your religious so-called experiences, everything's all part of you. It's all intertwined, centralized and decentralized. You must know that about self.
I mean, even if it is in a plasma cloud, the blood's plasma. So, I don't really...
You can look at it like that, why not? But it is still part and parcel you. That means you can change what's in you. You don't have to accept these things without question. You can get rid of these things that are not benefiting you, and I don't mean in the empire sense. I mean in the sense of your core and your future and your presence. They're not benefiting you at all. Just your affiliation with them and your homage or your connection with them is sentimental. You're just paying homage to the people that came before you because you don't want to affront them or offend them. A lot of your ancestors, I said this before in the past too, a lot of them are probably not, they wouldn't give you the time of day if you met them. Your own ancestors. And if they could trade bodies, they would do so and kick you right out. So just be wary of this whole ancestor worship stuff.
Yeah, I guess a lot of their selfishness led to the creation of a lot of the people that are here today.
A lot of the problems we have in this world today comes from your ancestry.
Yeah, for sure.
Not all, obviously, just like not all of us today are doing things. We're doing things against what we know that is wicked or that has been tearing everyone apart. We know these things, so we're not participating or contributing to them. So yes, when we are that ancestral realm, we want those who come after us not only to know us, this is not about vanity, but to know the knowledge that we have so they can take that further. You want that to pass through. So you're not the parasitic ancestor who will say, okay, when you're sleeping, I'm going to jump in and take over that body. Go ahead and astral project one more time.
As soon as you get up, move your meat, you lose your seat.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of stuff that's what I was asking as far as like certain things, I mean, really do seem to permeate or bleed through, no pun intended, like through the blood, like, because I was just reading about like, because they talk about mitochondrial DNA being like exclusively female, but that's not exactly true because in some instances, because they say like when the sperm fertilizes the egg, the chemical reaction of that process eliminates all the mitochondrial DNA from the sperm cell. But that's not always true. Some people do inherit some mitochondrial DNA from their fathers. And
Yeah, obviously so. But not only that, and this is in one of the lectures that I shared, as well as a podisode. I shared this with people. You can actually see it and hear it and learn something about the whole ATP process. And it is not reliant totally on the mitochondrial energy factor. The sperm has its own factory, if you will, of energy. And I don't mean just for momentum. And it's not reliant upon that which comes from the mitochondria. So, it would have to be self-contained. And even though the mitochondrial so-called DNA is shared amongst all the offspring, sometimes it's not. Sometimes that mitochondrial DNA does come from the father exclusively. These things can happen. That's just the way it goes within the realm of the micro world, the so-called microcosmic world.
I guess mathematically it has to be possible.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so since it's mathematically possible, it becomes possible. I mean, I guess that's how it would happen, though. I guess that's how you would have certain people would be sellouts to their own. I mean, after all of the crossbreeding, like from the black colonizers, and then also from the recessives, like you would have, I guess, going both ways. You would have people that would just sell out. Just because it just, for whatever reason, you would think they look a certain way and they come from a certain stock, apparently, but some DNA, I guess, sneaks through, and the programming is there, the coding is there, and like, I guess it goes both ways, like, because if they're raping all the natives, the autochthonous women, not all of the children would be submissive and subservient. You still have some of that code making its way through from her grandfathers and everything too, I guess, to where it would still be a child that would be like bucking, avoiding the system or trying to destroy it.
Well, we're talking in a sense of 2 or 3 or 4 separate worlds. The worlds that you were referring to in the so-called past, the masculine energies are no comparison to the masculine energies of today. That's why, it was either yes or no, up or down, on or off, black or white, as they say. In other words, if a male went against certain norms or was against a particular group, there was no, okay, let's work it out. No, they just went in and literally off with something. They took him out. So I don't think the women today would ever be able to deal with the men of then. Totally could not. And I don't think the men of then would have tolerated the women of today at all. So totally different worlds, completely different worlds. You read your scriptures, so-called scriptures, or you look at so-called historical accounts, and a lot of these groups are warring constantly, but you have to have a certain type of spiritual energy and mentality to be of that kind of nature. Most males today, they wouldn't be of that nature. They're more ideology driven than anything, and that's not a way to be either. we see what occurs with ideology. And yes, it is ingrained into the blood, or the so-called structured building blocks. And you see a lot of it now, you see a lot of it in the past too. That's how religious groups and controllers were able to control populations, and making one group feel superior or feel that they had to go out and destroy another group because. So ideologies are dangerous. They can be dangerous.
For sure. I mean, like they say that, I don't know if it, in with the opening scene of Inception, he's saying like, what's the most resilient parasite? And he's like, is it an intestinal worm? Da, 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 da. He's like, no, it's an idea.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Profound words.
So I guess ultimately it's, it's ideas fighting at the top. Is that how it is? It's like, it's just
No, there's actual so-called touchable, tangible beings, if you want to call it, at the so-called top. But factions maintain the order, and through the order, and one of those ways of presenting the order, or manifesting the order, is through indoctrination and ideology, and of course fear. Being plugged into the empire and not having access to it is a constant binary fear. Your utility bills are an example of this. If you cannot pay your utility bills, then you can't plug into the empire. And if you can't plug into the empire, you won't eat. And if you can't eat, then you can't survive. You can't get a mate. No one wants you. You're unattractive. All of these various things. That's fear. Literally using something within you, your own chemistry, which manifests as an emotion, to get you to comply. But you don't have to do that. And one of the ways to buffer that is through using the empire at its own game, and of course coming together in certain numbers wisely, not just in this kumbaya approach, like let's all get together. That's what those who are in control of corporations and governments, the people you think you elected, that's what they want you to do. There's power in foolishness. There's power for them in foolishness and in participation in a so-called electoral system. There's power for them, not for you. So no, you don't want to participate in that. Coming together is a small thing, a remnant, and that means bringing a community together. It's manageable. And then you make that grow by going to different places and repeating the same thing. Kind of doing what these vipers and parasites did. That's what they do. They do it all over your vessel. They go here, there, and there, and they set up little colonies. Well, that's what the bipedal parasites did. So you just beat them at their own game.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess that's really all that's all that's left. And I guess if we're still here talking about it, then it's like you said, the potential is there.
Now is the call to action, because if we're coming to the close of this particular live, then there's that call to action. What key points, as you guys have probably heard time and time again on your so-called jobs, what key points do you recall from this? What key points are you going to incorporate or bring into fruition in your life, in your private lives? Semi-private, you better protect that privacy. What are you going to bring into fruition? And so look into this IG Live when it's posted again and re-listen to it. But one of the main things is learning to write things down, and then from there take it into the physical. Don't be afraid to write things down. You're in the empire. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Learn how to balance a so-called checkbook. Make a budget. Stick with the budget. Find out what you're spending and what you don't need to spend on. Literally write these things down. Write them down. Stop being afraid to write things on paper, not on some application or software. Your phone needs a battery. Something happens to that phone. Someone steals it or breaks it. There goes your info. Get a book. Get a pen. Write it down.
Yeah, we're gonna need the analog more and more anyway. We have a community.
Definitely.
So, all right, in closing, what do you think that you think being equally yoked is like, what do they mean by that? And does it have any weight, or is it
It's
true?
an old term about being of sound mind, similar mind, and sharing those ideals together, not conflicting. Sure, that has weight, has merit. But in order to find that out, you have to test that before you get yoked. But, I just use that term because that's the word you use. Usually you think of an ox, or at least I do, when I hear the word yoke. Some people think it's Y-O-L-K, like egg yolk. No, it's yoke. Um, at least I thought it was. And that is basically kind of being bound to someone. Well, if you're going to be bound to someone, is that what you really want to be? Maybe not, but you do want to have confidence in someone so that they can have confidence in you too. And you provide for one another. You respect the roles, or if you want to call it that, the hierarchy principles of being together because you're working together. There should be no competition whatsoever in the place you call a household, whether that household is an apartment or your grandmother's house or basement, whatever. You are building together. There's not supposed to be any competition nor disrespect or doing things that are secretive. There should be no secrets. Secrets break apart so-called families. If you can't face the truth of your actions, then you don't need to be in any kind of connection. So, for people who might have had a child with someone else and they want to be with another person, there's no reason for that woman, a female, to lie about it. Tell the truth, like, this is another man's baby and I just want to let you know. So it's your choice. You want to stay or go, that's your choice. And I'm not going to put any kind of manipulative value on it. I'm just letting you know so that you have the option. So you choose to stay, great. If you choose to go, great. I respect it and I accept the consequences. That's an adult or a mature, an emotionally mature, sentient. And we're supposed to all be that right now. Not immature and not afraid of our decisions, not afraid of our words. So no need to sneak, no need to lie. Really, no need to lie. If you have more than one female that you're seeing, you should say that up front. And, no, I'm not giving this other female up, just letting you know, I'm not hiding and sneaking around. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, I'm going to go see her. So if there's a problem, just speak up. No need for animosity. And it's like, I'm not cool with that. So I'm not going to try to change you from that. If that's something you're with right now, great. So we can move on. Don't waste time of anyone else's time. Don't waste your time or their time. And drama is ridiculous. It's just emotional addictions. You want that rush, that dopamine from drama. No need for that. If you're an adult, if you're mature, then don't be afraid of the things that you do and the consequences that come from it and the words that you speak. No need to lie. Lying is immature. Speak the truth. Accept what happens. Like, no big deal. I always used to say that at different times and say, what's somebody going to do? Kill you? Shoot you? If it comes to that, then you don't need to be around that person.
Yeah.
Or in that situation. So speak only truth and only accept truth. If you're not getting it and you're staying there, that makes you in violation. That puts you in violation. You're not supposed to stay in a place where someone is lying to you.
I remember you were saying, when I first met you, you were like 1 + 1 = 1 because it's a couple. It's a couple. So ultimately, are you becoming one, or because I feel like you still always have yourself, even though you are unifying with
You
someone else.
unify when you come together for the purposes of regenerating or procreating. You unify in the eyes of the legal arrangements of the realm, and you unify under the laws that govern or that have been set in place by what some call the Most High or the originator creator. You come together as one under those circumstances. In all other circumstances, you are solo. Even in the circumstances of when it comes to exiting this realm, you don't go as a couple.
Yeah, nobody can
Wouldn't that
die.
be amazing if you did? If, it's like, okay, you get to stay until, she's ready to go or he's ready to go. No. Or even worse, he goes and you're not ready. Like, nope, you got to go. Many cultures were like that. They buried the spouse, usually the female, they buried her with them. Like, wait, I'm not ready. No. And like, he's gone. Like, well, to death do you part. So guess what? Get in the casket.
That's crazy. But yeah, but no, nobody can die for you though, man. Like, they can't go
No.
in your body and experience that for you.
Right, exactly. And many forget that, and religions hide that fact. Your consequences, the consequences of your actions, you face that judgment or whatever here and whatever happens beyond. But no one is to take that so-called bullet for you, that spiritual bullet for you, nor can they. Many parents would like to take the responsibility for the actions of their offspring, but that's not going to happen and doesn't happen. You're responsible for those actions that you commit, and so are they. Now, obviously, if they're not of age of consent, as they say, or age of rationality, you bear a lot of weight on that. That's one
Like what?
thing that the realm copied from the actual so-called universal law. If a baby picks up a gun that you left lying around and shoots your spouse, the baby's supposed to go to prison? No, you are supposed to go to prison because, or whatever is supposed to occur because of your negligence. So there's a point in time, and when that time passes, then the person is responsible for their actions. But up until that point, a child is not responsible for that actions, and nor, by the same token, nor are the offspring responsible for the actions of their parents. So if your parent is evil, that means unless you walk in their ways, that's why I say question. When you don't question, now you're responsible because you're taking on the same thing that they took on. And it's not hereditary. You're just copying their ways because for whatever reason, sentiment, or because you love that.
So when it comes to polygamy or polyamory, are some people more genetically suited for it, or is it just what is this? What is
We
the
have
situation?
to pose the question, are some people suited for parenthood, so-called parenthood? There are people who make great parents, if you want to use that adjective, and then there are those who probably shouldn't have even slept with the person or laid with the person, whatever euphemism you want to use, because they are not the best in terms of parenting is concerned. So does that mean that some make better parents? No, that means whatever they came through, it left such an indelible mark or imprint on them that they're just not going to be what they're supposed to be, especially if they're not willing to put in all the efforts that are necessary to make those changes. If they're sedate and relent with what lot they, as they say, have been allotted or given without question and without making any effort to change, then no, then they don't deserve to, or they shouldn't bring an offspring. That's just vanity and a lack of concern for some other life that you're ushering in. So no, not everyone should be a so-called parent because they lack what is necessary to be a parent. We have to come to that realization as well. We're not the ones to select. That's up to that individual to recognize within themselves. Obviously, many and most don't. They allow vanity to rule and they just go and mate and impregnate or get pregnant when they shouldn't have done so in the first place.
So using me as a barometer, would I be a person that has multiple wives, one wife, zero wives? Am I a person that could potentially have a child, multiple children, I mean? Or am I more suited for zero?
You are suited to what you prepare yourself for. and what you're truly truthful about and serious about. If you haven't made ready self and the realm around you, the world around you for all of that, then no, you're not ready for that.
You know, I was just asking, like, you know, as far as anybody that might be trying to use me as a barometer or a comparison, if you had any clear cut, like yes or no, I mean, you have the capacity for this or don't have the capacity for this, and
When you plan and make ready self and outside self for all of those things that you were talking about, you know, multiple wives and multiple children, they're coming into a realm where there's wealth. They're coming into a realm where the females that you have wisely selected and literally interviewed and found to be worthy of being with you and being the mother of your offspring and being around each other. Because that's one of the main reasons of so-called polygamous situations, that the children never go unnurtured. And there's none of that, okay, these are my children. I don't give a about her kids, you know, whatever. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that my kids get the best and the most out of what he leaves behind. Now then, and that happens. And we see accounts of that in not only Bible, but in many tales and stories. We see accounts of many women who brought down so-called kingdoms because she was more concerned with what she could get for her offspring. Allegedly, the Roman Empire was built on that, you know, jealous women getting what they wanted for their children because the man had many women or mistresses, and maybe he chose the mistress or the concubine over the wife. But those who respected the whole so-called institute of concubinage, they knew what was up. And so did the concubine. She didn't step out of line. Like, you know, I know what I'm getting into. I'm getting protection. I'm getting room and board. My children will be cared for. They're not going to want for anything. So yeah, I know what I'm getting into. And I'm not trying to step into wifey number one's position. Respect and knowledge of what you're doing, and there's none of that in our realm today, by design. Obviously, we're supposed to go through this, and this is very beastly. So most people are not even ready. Forget about self. What about the women that you would take on? Are they ready for that situation? Despite what they say on the surface, more than likely they're probably not ready for it. And many will take it and pervert it.
yeah, and you know, I mean, I always just ask, like, just so I kind of can clear what I'm supposed to be doing. If it's something that's supposed to be clear cut, like if I'm supposed to just like learn as much as I can, get as much knowledge as I can, so that I can pass it on to other people that are not my, you know, my progeny or my blood relatives, and that's what my focus should be instead of focusing on being a father or being a husband. If I should just focus on that, then I want to just go full throttle on that, you know. But if it's
What did I say earlier about everyone being a potential father and mother in training? So you're always ready for it if the need be. And therefore, it's not about you wanting to or planning to, you're already ready for it. So every man should be acquiring wisdom and knowledge, not for competition's sake, but for the sake of, okay, every woman that looks his way is going to say, well, that's the man. And so every woman is doing the same thing. When he look, that's the woman, you know, so everybody is a perfect pick. So you decide based on other criteria that is objective as opposed to just subjective or facade related.
yeah, if everybody's beautiful and intelligent, then you got to figure something else out.
Exactly. And anybody can be beautiful with a filter.
Yeah.
So you're not looking for those things. So yes, keep making ready self. And a woman is making ready to say, okay, you know, I'm ready to be wife and mother. Most women are not looking to be wife. They don't mind being what they think is a mother, but they're not really a mother. They're just someone who bears a child. Anybody can bear a child. Any mammal can bear an offspring. So no, you don't get that right. Just like a male thinking the same thing. You're supposed to know that you are a potential mother, a potential father, and you respect that and you know what goes with it. So you're not going to bring anyone into this realm unless you've made ready self and the place around you. They're coming into a place where it's comfortable. They're not going to be starving one day and eating another day, or they're not going to have, gunshots coming through their ceiling, or they're not going to be in a realm that's wealthy but full of wicked perverts.
Yeah.
So wealth does not make a beautiful community. There are many people who have brought offspring in, and they've brought these children into horrible, horrendous situations. Wealthy people are not living in this idyllic scene. They're going through crap that they bought on themselves. There is a happy medium, however, or pardon the term happy. There is a balanced medium, and that's what you go for. But you have to make ready self, and it's something you don't just do when you think you're ready to mate or find a mate. You're supposed to be doing that now. You should have started before, but hey, no better time than the present. That means making your seed strong. That means making your brain faculties strong. That means making the connectivity and awareness within strong. You don't have time for any foolishness, and you'll start to realize that as you go along. You'll recognize these things, and you won't tolerate it from yourself, nor will you tolerate it from anyone else that you are around. That you wouldn't be taking into your private realm any female that is foolish just so you can have some sex and throw it to the side. No, you wouldn't waste your time, and you wouldn't waste hers. Many of the people you see online these days, they're with that. They're 1 minute they're saying, yeah, get yourself together, build up yourself, build up your wealth. And if you want to play around on the side, you can take these females and you know you're not serious, but then just have your fun and be honest and kick her to the curb. That's just as foolish and wicked.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't provide clarity, then it's just going to bring confusion. And I feel like all that type of stuff only brings confusion.
It does. And we don't do that in our state of being. We know better. And when you do know these things, you violate self when you enact upon all of these ways that you know you're not supposed to, or when you participate in for whatever reason. There's no such thing as a moment of weakness when you know that what you're doing is weak. You're in a private spot, a spot that you can be alone. Those are rare occasions because that will not be the case in the coming months ahead. So you want to use that place advantageously and wisely, not wasting any time now that you know what you're supposed to do. And we'll be checking on you to make sure you're doing that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely, I'll definitely put like a specific date on it, like you said.
And leave that quiet. That's between you and your journal.
Yeah.
Parasites will always find a way to get in. And one of the ways is through dates or dating. And I mean the pun. So keep that private.
All right. Duly
Okay.
noted.
So are there any quick questions that anyone would like to ask before we part? If not,
Somebody said, there's a few questions here. Somebody said, how do you propose non-U.S. citizens bypass visa restrictions to travel for the purpose of building community?
how do you bypass the realm? You can do so creatively, or you can just go through the system, the realm system, and get your papers. Those are the only two options. There literally is no other options. That's it.
Yeah, you gotta find a way, some non-conventional way, or you're gonna have to get married or get a job.
Yeah, exactly. So, you can, if, and I don't mean just find somebody and marry them. You have to find someone who knows what your goal is and they respect that goal and they want to help you with it. That's fine. And do that. Don't be a parasite. And you can do that too. That's one of the ways, and I don't mean be a parasite. I mean, when I say do that too, I was referring to the marriage. You can do, that's one way to do it. Um, and be part of a community, or you can return to the land from whence you came and build your community there.
A final question, somebody said, do women keep the DNA code of every man they slept with forever? And if so, if you have a baby with her, will some of the DNA code be from her past partners?
The so-called DNA is the material left over, the residue. There's other residue as well, and that residue comes in the chemical alteration when she has the sex act or indulges in the sex act. So each time she does, it alters based on the male that she's with. So yes, she maintains all of that within her, like a recording. Um, it's there for a purpose, but it's being misused when she doesn't respect and know her purpose and recognize her function and format. You don't go against that. I mentioned this before in the past. There's no reason for a female to be jealous that she cannot have multiple so-called sexual, here's that term, partners, or that she cannot impregnate in the case of female homosexuals, or vice versa for a man who feels, oh, male who feels he wants to get pregnant but can't because he's not a female. Stop being jealous of what you're not. There's no reason for jealousy. Everyone has a purpose. Respect your purpose and respect their purpose. Do not violate or disrespect your purpose. Do not violate or disrespect the other gender's purpose. It's just the way it goes. If you cannot get with that, then you are the pariah. You should isolate yourself. And those who recognize it should not mate with you because you'll just be spreading that until you change that, get that out of yourself. There's no reason for jealousy, period. There's definitely no reason for jealousy of someone or something or that you are not and are not meant to be, plain and easily known and recognized. There's no purpose for that. Yet, if that's the way you want to be, you should out yourself so everyone knows. There are many people like that. That is a twisted reality for many, where it may not be on the surface envy, but it is a deep-seated envy. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond what occurred with them in their upbringing and the spiritual programming or experimental programming that they received that makes them dissatisfied with what they are and who they are, or to despise what and who they are. And this goes beyond not the whole sexual orientation. This goes to many other factors as well. There are many people who are so-called regular, but they despise themselves, or they have and it goes beyond so-called low self-esteem. They literally have no desire to change the way they are because whomever forced into their brain and their thinking that they are nothing and that they'll be nothing, they've accepted it and they've internalized it. And so they live according to that. And when they are with someone else, that's all they can breed. That's all they bring forward. The other individual must recognize that. Were they brought together because they were attracted to that, because that's part of them? And if they realize this, then they should definitely part, but they could also help each other as they part. I use the term out process. No reason to make enemies, none of that. And for that matter, no reason to make friends. You can just still be amicable and adult or mature and get out of these situations that you shouldn't be into. And by no means allow anything that makes you inebriated or high to be the catalyst for your union. Many people do that. They get drunk, they get high, and that's part of the reason why they have a so-called sexual contact. If that's the case, then you should definitely not even talk. You use the wrong thing to come together, to be together. And drugs is not the way. And I mean alcohol, too. When I say drugs, I mean the whole 9 yards, and so far as anything that takes you out the scope of awareness and level-headedness and sobriety. No.
Yeah, no, that's what I have struggled with though, like what you're saying though, as far as like feeling like you know I shouldn't exist in that sense, you know, and anything, you know, like that type of shit. Like I don't want to be somebody's downfall through association, and you know, just because like I just feel like it doesn't matter, like the immutable characteristics that I have, I'll never be able to, you know, I'll never be able to change them. They're immutable, and they're not anything that's favorable to the world. So I mean, I be trying to live around it, you know, but like I do feel that way, you know, if I ever like get into a state of like thinking too much, or if somebody really wants to ask me about my life, or like go over my life story or how I feel about certain things, I try to honestly try to avoid my opinions on things, because a lot of that shit is like rooted in that idea, that thought process. So I think most of the time I just try to keep active and do different, you know, whatever I can, little different challenges, because otherwise I stew in that and feeling like it doesn't matter what I do. I was born a certain way, and
No, you weren't born a certain way. And I mentioned this to you when you came out to the ranch, and I said this to you in person the very first day. I said that you are the epitome of what both of your parents have released. So, in other words, they just released all their bad parts and put them into you, and not genetically, but through their words, their actions, and their inaction as they raised you. And I mean that in the sense that you hear it, you know, as opposed to brought you up, both of them, maybe one more than the other. And obviously, you have to look at that in a calm way and a rational way, not accusatory way. You recognize what someone has done. You know, obviously, these are your parents, but at the same time, you recognize what they have done. Many people do this to their offspring. The ones that stay together and ones that separate, they do this a lot. And so the offspring becomes an adult, not necessarily mature, but they become an adult, and they just exude all of that stuff that came from their parents, the arguing, the the uh, the hate, the despising one another, the manipulative actions, all of the things, the brooding and silence, all of that coming forth. But where does it go? It goes into the child, and they're supposed to protect that offspring from all that. If they truly cared at the time that they were doing these things, they would have said, okay, one, if you had an older sibling, okay, you guys stay in here. We're just going to go out for a while, take a walk around the block. We'll be right back. And that's all you need to know. They're going to take a walk around the block. They start coming back with bloody nose and black eyes, then you're okay, well, wait a minute. You know something was wrong. You know that they were not doing something. They were doing something foul. But if they come back and they're just pleasant and that's all you see, you're not absorbing any of that stuff that they do around you. And people don't recognize this, and they will be judged for that. I'm talking about all you parents out there, grandparents out there. You'll be judged for this stuff, and you'll see it in your offspring. And there's no taking it back. You put it out there. You put that into them. So now this individual has to repair themselves. If you are wise and if you are true, you'll recognize in yourself and change that in yourself and help to be part of the repair process that you help to break, or the person that you help to mold and break. But usually it's that offspring, they have to repair themselves from the things that their, you know, so-called parents did. You're not blaming them, but you recognize what they've done. There's no reason to blame them, because that just makes more emotional negativity within you. You're rational, you realize it, you're not going to get caught up in it. You know what they did, they know what they did. Will they be woman enough and man enough to change themselves and recognize that and then come to you and help repair you? If not, don't wait around for it.
but what if it's things that I can't change? You know what I mean? Because that's a lot of it. You know, like I said, it's immutable characteristics. I feel like have plagued my thinking when I'm not in a challenge. If I have to sit and be still and like not and like or have to converse with someone about life, I feel like I ultimately it all permeates through my viewpoint is that paleness is weakness. Paleness is the root of all evil, and paleness is what you don't want to be. And I can't change any of that. Really, I really can't. You know. So
Well,
like,
you've got alternatives. You can be like one of my clients, a good friend of mine. She's under that so-called Jewish umbrella. She's from Syosset. Her parents didn't think. I doubt they came through a matchmaker, but they didn't really care when, the time that she was brought into the realm. They probably were drunk and experimenting with drugs. It was the 70s, and they were in that part of the world. And they gave birth to her, and she's not the best looking, and she has, pudgy this, pudgy that, and all her life she had to go through all that crap from being ostracized by other females and not being selected in the realm of so-called high school. So it hurt her, it damaged her. But she just figured, you know what? I'm going to repair myself. She got plastic surgery. She got a tan. She's not pale. She looks better. That helped. That gave her a symbol. At least she can work what's on the inside. And I told her, don't lie to the man that you're with. Let them know the face they see is not the face that was. Let them know this is me, but this is how I came through it. The problems didn't make me get the plastic surgery. I did that just for a symbol. I wanted to change this, and I changed it. She could have kept it the same. It's all on her. She made that choice. I said, you make the choices you make and you accept the consequences. I didn't tell her to get the plastic surgery. She did that. She said it made her feel better about herself, and apparently it did. She doesn't hold any ill will towards her parents, and she didn't wait around for them to come to her and say, hey, we did this to you to the day. I don't think that her father's around anymore, but none of them, neither of them came to her, and not even an apology. Nothing. So the arrogance that you see, you don't want to see that in yourself. Don't be arrogant. Expect that you are going to make mistakes and recognize these mistakes. And if you make them and they involve someone else, rectify them. If they hurt someone else, repair them as best you can, if you can, but let them know that you accept what you've done.
yeah, I definitely no. I mean, I'm not saying any of that is wrong. I just feel like the thing that troubles me the most is that there's nothing I can really do to change that. And my life has reinforced the viewpoints. Everything I've went through in my life has reinforced it. It's not like I lived in a vacuum that maybe made me feel like paleness is right and strong and exceptional and dominant. You know what I mean? Like by its nature. I feel like everything in my life has reinforced that this is what you don't want, this is what you don't want to be, and you don't even really want to associate with it. You know what I mean? That's my experience. Like that's what I experienced. And when I
Well,
and throughout my day
there
to
are
day,
people
that's what I experience a lot.
Well, there are people who are pale, but they don't harbor all of those parasitic entities and forces. They've recognized that this does not work. There are people who are dark and they've taken on parasitic forces and they're against other dark people or so-called melanated people. And they're selfish and hold all of the negative things you can think of. You don't want to be around either one of those or anything in between. That's what everyone's coming to, who is wise, is coming to the rationale. Wait a minute. We don't want to be around wickedness, plain and simple, because it doesn't respect purpose. It doesn't respect the true hierarchy of life. And we don't want to be around that. It's enough. We've been on this realm for a long enough time to know better. But as you see, the recidivism is constant. And it's not supposed to be, but it is. It doesn't have to be. And the only way to do that is going to be on a small scale, on a remnant scale. Don't look for it in the critical mass level.
Yeah. No, I mean but that's why I feel like I lean towards just going all in with knowledge and know-how, because I feel like I don't want to spread the curse. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I feel. And somebody said like, why do you associate with the body more than your soul? I mean, again, not everybody's a soul. Not everybody is a soul bearer, and like I feel like as far as that, like the body's just reflecting the state of the inner being. So like I don't really, I haven't. If I'm just in something and I'm functioning within something, then I think it's okay. I don't really concern myself much with how my genetics or how I look or none of that. But as soon as I am reminded of it, or if I see other people exhibiting the behaviors that come from paleness, I feel like I don't want anything to do with perpetuating this curse,
Mhm.
and so I feel like I want to withdraw from those processes. As far as like
You can refrain from them. You can repent from them. You don't have to bring forth so-called biological offspring. As I said before, you can adopt. And what you mentioned before about an idea being stronger than a so-called pathogen or antigen or microbe or parasite, it is very true. So passing along true knowledge and passing along truth and balance, that's the idea that you pass along, and that's stronger than, and we've seen this in tale and story and allegory and Bible scripture, where someone's blood kin violates everything that they've been taught from their very blood. And then someone who is unrelated literally respects what the individual, that person has taught or has learned. So where is the connection that is the strongest, or which is the connection that's strongest? The connection apparently with the blood was not strong because this individual made decisions that went against what their father had taught them. You can look in terms of Absalom and Dawood. He went against what his father taught him.
yeah, he tried to kill his own dad.
Right. You can look in terms of BT, I think is the name. She was Canaanite, but she rebuked or forsook their many deities, their pantheon of deities, and went with the Most High, Moses, God. So there you go. And totally unrelated. The I don't know, and I don't want to presume, if you listen to the podisode that I made or created on good and evil, and also the one before that on within that podisode, I talk about three different quotes. And one of the quotes I mentioned before was from Shakespeare, and about from As You Like It. All the world is the stage, and all the men and women players. Um, each man in his life wears many hats or has many roles. But what does that say about the playwright? The playwright can write you in, and can you change your role? No. But the playwright can change your role. So that's what you are to seek. And you come out of all of the things that came before you. I mentioned this before, all of those wicked affiliations that many hold true to because of their potential, supposed potential perks and benefits, whether it's ideological or emotional or financial. What does it give you? What does it allegedly profit you? Nothing. So you can come away from those and put them out completely and tell others, especially the ones who are victimized by those orders and societies and associations, and let them know this is what these people do. And I'm letting you know because I used to be part of that, and I'm not, and I have to constantly, day by day, stay out of it and remind myself to stay out of it, but it's not part of me. And when it comes to passing things on, many individuals are arrogant in the sense that they cannot answer the question why they want to usher in bloodline offspring. So they have this level of arrogance that says, I don't want to be raising someone else's children, so they wouldn't even consider adoption. But then you have those who have no problem with adoption. They're ready to adopt, and they have no ulterior motives. So you must look at yourself and see, are you willing and ready to adopt? Or do you have a level of arrogance that says, no, I mean, I have to have bloodline. I have to be
No,
fruitful and multiply. If you have a lot of wisdom that you want to learn and grow with, but you want to impart that. You don't want it to just come with you and go with you. You want to, because you're learning a lot, you want to pass that on. And one of the ways to do that is by adopting. You can adopt a few children who need and require true homes, as opposed to what they could go through or what they have come through. Many people can do that. So it doesn't matter in the sense that there are a lot who will not have a mate. They can have a mate. They can get together with a mate and they can adopt together.
yeah, I just don't know how I would ever be in position to adopt. You know what I mean? Like, as far
You
as
have
like,
to work toward it, just like you're working towards building up the land that you're on and the community that will come to pass or come into fruition. You have to work towards it and build towards it.
I think,
Internally, are you prepared to even respect yourself? If you're not willing and ready to respect yourself and question the things within yourself, then no, you cannot be anyone's parent.
I wouldn't mind helping a woman take care of her child. I wouldn't never want to be a stepdad, but I wouldn't mind if it was a woman with a child. I wouldn't help. I wouldn't mind if I'm not involved with her like on a sexual level or like that level. I wouldn't mind helping her raise her child, but I don't want to do it on a stepdad status. Like, it's not something I want to do. And
You could be a mentor in the
yeah,
child's life.
see, that's cool with me. To me, that's fine. But I don't think paperwork wise that I'll ever be able to qualify
Oh,
to
well,
be
you
able.
never know. You might have a cousin in the South who gets pregnant and they don't want their baby, and then there you go. You can adopt someone, and they're still blood related. They're a cousin, so you still kind of cover both bases. I'm just using the
Yeah.
facetious manner here, but you get what I mean. If
You know
you
what I mean?
didn't want to go in through the empire and do it the paperwork way, yes, as you said before, you can be the mentor to someone else's child. That's fine too.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, I don't really have any problem with that. I mean, like you said, you got to put it somewhere. Like, you don't.
But you
I,
have to be wise in your thinking and holistic. So this woman, she is with you, not with you, but she is just basically a friend. And you're a mentor to her child. Mind you, if you're not with her, she will eventually meet another man.
yeah,
And that other man is not going to be comfortable with you as a mentor, with her child, even though that's not his child.
I mean,
It has to be holistic and look at things truthfully and readily without flinching.
I have to just.
So
I'm coming off the bench. I'm just substituting. I come in for a few minutes of the kid's life. You know what I mean? I can't. I'm in there for the second quarter. I can't.
okay.
What can I really do?
No, that's fine. You know when to step out. Okay, it's like he now has a stepdad or whatever, stepfather, and you know
Yeah,
when to step back. And by then, maybe the child can say, "Okay, this is my mentor. He's like my, coach or whatever." And no, I'm not putting him out of my life. And let the stepfather, if he's mature, obviously, if this woman is mature enough, she wouldn't accept any other situation. If she's with someone like that, then she's got issues and you've selected the wrong pairing, because any woman that accepts that in a man, he recognizes, if he can see and he can observe, he knows there's nothing going on clandestinely. Obviously, most men are going to think that something's going on, and no man in the right mind is going to say, okay, yeah, you can have your male friend, and somebody that looks like you, please. They're going to allow. They're going to be like, no, 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 no. He better be gay in order for, or at least 80 years old for this to
yeah,
be, to be accepted. So you have to be ready to say, okay, I'm going to bow out of the situation. You got a man, and you let the child know when you get 18, come back and visit.
yeah. No, I would. That'd be cool. I mean, that would be cool. I have no qualms with that. I have no problems with that at all. I wouldn't mind that as a life. If
Mm-hmm.
that's how, if it shakes out that way, I have no problem. You know what I mean? Like you said, got to be prepared either way. But I would not have any problems with that. Because like you said, you're not learning this shit for nothing. Like, you got to help install it into the collective somehow.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it is spoken, so it shall be done. And I saw a question in the chat room from someone about journaling. I don't know because it's scrolled up and I don't see it any longer. But from what I recall, as I mentioned before, don't be lazy. Get 2 or 3 books before they stopped selling them. They used to have stores where you can actually buy books. You don't have to get those calendar looking books, but get one that actually has lines in it so that you can write and you can maybe put a date on it so you know when the entry was made and gives you enough space. You more than likely will run out of space, so that's why I said get 2 or 3 and write in them, not like a diary. It's not going to be loaded with your stream of consciousness. This will have pivotal knowledge that you are imparting as if you are talking to someone and recording it. So you're talking to self and recording it into this journal. You'll reflect upon it in the years ahead when you look onto it. So it can act as a book of inspiration. It can act as a book of information that you can refer to for knowledge. Say, for instance, you put into it different recipes for tinctures or herbal remedies. That's the way things were done in the past, and they will be done again in the so-called future. That's journaling. That's the epitome of journaling.
Yeah, it's a must. It's like breathing almost.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't want to get rudely cut off because I don't know when it's going to cut off. But thank you for the time, Pharaoh.
Thank you for yours, and thank all of the participants and listeners for being patient, especially when we got disconnected the first time, for returning if you did return, and for those who stayed on and listened.
Yeah, thank you all for tuning in, guys. Sorry about the beginning, but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So until next time.
All right, until next time then. Talk to you soon.